This is an amazing and very important video. It is about the Taylor Swift Super Bowl and the related prophetic signs, but it is also about so much more than this. This video will explain an important part of God's big picture of signs, patterns, and connections that is predicting that U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on May 19th, 2024, and that a dirty bomb or suitcase nuke will be detonated in Manhattan, New York City, and there will be an evacuation from Manhattan Island on July 25th, 2024. The date that this video is posted proves that this prediction is being made ahead of time, as does this time-stamped email and forensic notes PDF document. If you are skeptical for some reason, please email me and I will forward these to you. As can be seen in this email, the prediction that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash has been known since at least August 5th, 2021. If you have already watched this essential introductory information, you can skip ahead 28 minutes. God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is only being explained on this channel. The full intended meaning of God's prophetic signs cannot be properly understood without their context and connections to other prophetic signs. God's big picture of signs is an interconnected web. It is through these connections between related prophetic signs that God is telling very important stories that are revealing very important knowledge. For example, it is through God's big picture of signs, patterns, and connections that he is revealing the way in which Barack Obama will become the president again, which is through the death of Vice President Kamala Harris in a plane crash. For many years, God has been painting this particular picture through his prophetic signs, and along the way he has been developing numerous trails of connected signs that are leading to the precise date that Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash. Here is a diagram that illustrates one such example among countless examples. As we can see here, God has demonstrated a number of trails of signs that led to August 24th, 2023. It was known ahead of time that there would be a prophetic sign related to the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash on August 24th. And then on this day, Vladimir Putin was the first public official to confirm that the Russian general and leader of the Wagner Group that attempted a coup of Vladimir Putin died in a plane crash, which hints at the soft coup that has been unfolding in America in recent years. In retrospect, it could have been easily predicted that the Russian general of the Wagner Group would die in a plane crash on August 24th, because it was known that August 24th is 54 days before October 17th, which was another date God was pointing to ahead of time. This is why on August 24th, Trump, God's trumpet, had in 5 months been arrested for the 4th time in the 4th state. It also hinted at the number 54. God has been using in his signs the theme of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment, the first black regiment to fight in the Civil War, who were known for fighting valiantly at Fort Wagner. Hence the Wagner plane crash 54 days before October 17th. As we can see in this diagram, the trail of signs continues on from August 24th to the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash on February 24th. This is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works. And this theme of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment is an example of a story that God is telling that is extremely important. Actually, February 24th ended up being another step in the trail of signs that is leading to May 19th. The date 224 hints at 2 times 24 and hints at G2424 in Strong's Greek Bible Concordance, which is the Greek word for the name Jesus. Greek letters are also numbers, and the numeric value of the name Jesus in Greek is equal to 888. The number 24 is 8 plus 8 plus 8. The other prophetic signs on February 24th also revealed the number 8. This includes the S&P 500 stock market index's close for the weekend at 5,088.80. And the Boston Celtics basketball team's 8th win in a row, giving them an 8-game lead over the next team, and the dangerous basketball court storming incident after the 8th ranked Blue Devils college basketball team lost to the Deacon Demons in an upset. Also on February 24th, Trump won the primary for the 8th state to join the Union when he beat the former governor of the 8th state. Trump campaigned in the capital of the 8th state on the day of Harris's third visit to the 8th state this year, which hinted at 3 8s and 888. The name Trump in Simple English Gematria is equal to 88. Donald J. Trump in English Gematria is equal to 888. The S&P 500 stock market index close at 5,088.80 on February 24th hinted at adding 5 times 8 days from February 24th to reach April 4th. As well, one of the many trails of signs that led to February 24th, when the S&P 500 was closed at 5,088.80, was the 13 days connection from Super Bowl 58, in which Taylor Swift, who is known for being obsessed with the number 13, attended her 13th Chiefs game this season. Super Bowl 58 hints at 5 plus 8 equals 13, and also hints at the addition of 5 times 8 days to February 24th, which was 13 days after Super Bowl 58. 5 times 8 days after the stock market was closed at 5,088.80 points was the date 4/4, April 4th. The Antichrist is the 44th president, and also the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. It is predicted that the 44th president will become the president again after the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash, and the date 4/4 in 2024 was exactly 2 times 3 years, which hints at the number 23. After the crash of the Thunderbirds jet that was number 4 in its squad on the date 4/4 in 2018. Thunderbirds jets are F-16s, which hints at 4 times 4. This Thunderbirds jet crashed in the 36th state, and the number 36 hints at 666, the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy, as 36 hints at 3 6s, and also it is 6 times 6, and 2 times 18, which is 6 plus 6 plus 6, and the 36th triangular number, which in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 36th row is 666, and 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way up to 36 equals 666. Alaska is the 49th state to join the Union. The 49th vice president is predicted to die in a plane crash, which will lead to the return of the 44th president to the White House. And on the date 4/4, Alaska Airlines announced that it had received 4 times $4 million from Boeing for the door that blew out of its plane in January. This announcement regarding 4 times $4 million on the date 4/4 was exactly 4 times 4 days before 2 Japanese military helicopters collided and crashed. In God's signs, helicopter blades are symbolic of the letter X, which is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist that is described in Bible prophecy. An X helicopter blade hints at 4 points, and 2 helicopter blades hints at 4 and 4. The 2 helicopters and their blades that hinted at 4 and 4 crashed 4 times 4 days after the date 4-4 and the announcement regarding 4 times $4 million. The reason why God is using Japan in his signs is that the land of the rising sun, with a sun on its flag, is symbolism for the coming catastrophic solar flare that will knock out America's power grid, and Japan is symbolism for nuclear bombs, and Japanese anime is symbolism for the coming mass demonic possession of those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist. Harris is predicted to crash in her plane in St. Louis, near where the 2 eclipses engendered an X over the nation, and this is predicted to be 29 days after the 2 helicopters crashed. The number 29 is God's way of hinting at 9/11 using only 2 numbers, as the number 2 hints at 1 and 1. On 9/11 in 2001, planes that were on their way to Los Angeles, California, were hijacked and then crashed. Harris is predicted to crash in her plane that will be homeward bound to her $5 million mansion in Brentwood, California, 38 days after the news broke of the death of O.J. Simpson. Simpson was known for the slow-speed car chase that he led homeward bound on the I-5 highway to his mansion in Brentwood, California. News coverage of the chase up the I-5 interrupted the live broadcast of Game 5 of the 1994 NBA Finals, which was exactly 7 plus 7 times 7 months after the live broadcast of Game 3 of the 1989 World Series in San Francisco was interrupted by an earthquake that caused a section of the I-80 Bay Bridge to collapse between Oakland and San Francisco. In the Bible, the Israelites enacted a symbolic 7 plus 7 times 7 before the walls of security of Jericho collapsed in God's judgment due to an earthquake. The earthquake during Game 3 that broke the I-80 bridge hinted at 3/8 and 888, which hints at the name Jesus. And a bridge is symbolic of the connection between man and God, which is Jesus. A broken bridge is symbolic of the broken connection between man and God. Harris and O.J. Simpson are both from San Francisco, and this is why it is predicted that Harris will die 38 days, which hints at 3/8, after news broke of the death of O.J. Simpson. The Simpson car chase began after the warrant for his arrest was issued at 11 a.m., and it ended at 9 p.m. in front of his home. The chase that began after the arrest warrant for murder at 11 a.m. and ended at 9 p.m. was 2,643 days before 9/11, because G 2,643 in Strong's Greek Bible Concordance is the word that means reconciliation. Through the 9/11 events, God warned America to reconcile with him for its sin and its murder of unborn babies. Harris is the advocate for the murder of unborn babies. She is predicted to die in a plane crash in the city with the area code 314, 38 days after the death of O.J. Simpson on April 11, 2024. April 11, 2024 was exactly 22 years and 7 months after 9/11 in 2001, and 22 divided by 7 is shorthand for pi, which is 3.14, which hints at the area code 314. 22 years and 7 months is also exactly 271 months, and 271 is the 58th prime number. Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash on May 19, 2024, 85 days after the S&P 500 stock index was closed at 5,088.80 points, which hinted at the number 58. The number 58 hints at the number 85, which is why Harris will die 85 days after the stock market hinted at the number 58. The reason why God is pointing to the death of Kamala Harris with the number 85 is that she will be replaced by Michelle Obama, who will appoint Barack Obama, and Barack Obama first moved to Chicago in 85 after the May 19th Communist Organization was disbanded in 85. This is the reason why Obama hosted the 85 Chicago Bears, as in the 1985 Chicago Bears, at the White House on the Day of Atonement in the Hebrew calendar, exactly 13 years before the Antichrist Obama will be defeated at the Lord's second coming on the Day of Atonement in 2024. The Antichrist is described in the 13th chapter of the book of Revelation, and 8 plus 5 equals 13. The 85 Chicago Bears lost only one game in their season, and that was in week 13 of the season. The loss was because of Miami Dolphins quarterback number 13. 13 years before the 85 Chicago Bears, the Miami Dolphins became the only team to achieve an undefeated season. Dolphins player number 13 was the Super Bowl MVP that year. In the Bible, 30 years is symbolic of a king. Obama is well known for being a fan of Chicago sports teams. The 85 Chicago Bears Super Bowl win in January of 1986 began a 30-year cycle in which all of the major sports teams from Chicago won their league's championship. This included the Chicago Blackhawks, the Chicago White Sox, and Chicago Cubs, all of which ended severe droughts of championship wins and ended supposed sports curses, which hinted at the curse of the Antichrist. And all three of these sports teams visited the Antichrist while he was in the White House. The 30-year pattern was fulfilled 4 days before the 44th president's last day in the White House, when he was presented with jersey number 44 by star player number 44 of the 2016 Chicago Cubs. And 16 equals 4 times 4. Also, the Kansas City Royals have only been crowned kings of baseball twice, and their 2 World Series wins were exactly 30 years apart. Their first win was in 85. The plot of the movie Back to the Future took place in 85, and 30 years later in the future, in 2015, and the movie included a joke about the Chicago Cubs winning the World Series, which they finally did win the year after the Royals won in 2015, exactly 30 years after their first win in 85. All of this served to point to the year that the Antichrist king, Obama, moved to Chicago in 85 after the May 19th Communist Organization was disbanded in 85. The truth is that Obama was a full-fledged member of the May 19th Communist Organization, which originated in Bill Ayers' Weather Underground organization. And the truth is that Obama got his start in politics with the help of Bill Ayers for the sole purpose and ambition of subverting the American system in a clandestine communist-style revolution. The May 19th Communist Organization was named after the birth dates of Ho Chi Minh, the leader of Vietnam, and Malcolm X. In God's signs, the number 9 is the most important number, as from the Bible it symbolizes God's judgment. Kamala Harris is predicted to die in a plane crash on May 19th, near where the eclipses engendered an X over the nation, exactly 99 years after the birth of Malcolm X on the date May 19th. God uses the number 188 in his signs as H188 in the Hebrew Concordance is the word that means woe! It is used in the Bible in the context of extreme judgment from God. 99 years is the equivalent of exactly 1,188 months, which hints at H188, woe! The reason why Harris will die at the X engendered by the eclipses, 1,188 months after the birth of Malcolm X, is for God to prove who the real Barack Obama is. Those who have fallen for the lies of Obama and the political left are on their way to hell, and they need to repent immediately. The planes crashed on 9/11 in Lower Manhattan before the New York Stock Exchange in Lower Manhattan opened. On the morning of Tuesday, 9/11 in 2001, the Dow was closed at 9,605 from the end of the trading day on Monday, 9/10 in 2001. 9,605 hinted at 9 and 6 plus 5 equals 11, and therefore hinted at 9/11. It was closed at precisely 9,605.51. This was 0.34 points before its close on the prior trading day on Friday, 9/7 in 2001. The 0.34 points difference hints at 2 times 17, and the two planes that struck the two towers 17 minutes apart. On 9/10 and 9/11, the Dow was closed at 9,605.51, 0.34 points below its close on 9/7 at 9,605.85. God did this to point to 0.51 and 0.85 in order to communicate that the Antichrist would be the 51st vice president, who was a member of the May 19th Communist Organization that disbanded in 85. God also did this to point to how the Antichrist would be appointed the 51st vice president through using the 25th Amendment, which is what the date 9/7 hints at, as 97 is the 25th prime number. Exactly 4 plus 4 years, which hints at the 44th president. After the Dow closed at 9,605.51 on 9/11 in 2001, the Dow closed at 9,605.41 on 9/11 in 2009, in the year the 44th president was inaugurated. This difference of 0.10 points hints at 5 plus 5 and hints at the I-55 highway that connects Chicago to Cairo, Illinois, and the area of the country that is nicknamed Little Egypt, where the two paths of the eclipses crossed over each other, which is near where Kamala Harris is predicted to crash on the 99th birthday of Malcolm X. The Dow closed at 9,605.41 on 9/11 in 2009, exactly 99 days after Obama went down to Cairo, Egypt, to deliver a speech to the Muslim world and to tell them that America is no longer a Christian nation. A chapter in the book of Isaiah describes the Antichrist, and it begins with, "Woe to those who go down to Egypt." This 99 days after Obama went down to Egypt to speak to the Muslim world hints at the 99th anniversary of Malcolm X, a militant leader in the Nation of Islam movement that has ties to the communist movement and the May 19th Communist Organization. An X is symbolic of the mark that the Antichrist will compel people to take. 0.51 points and the 51st vice president hints at 51 equals 3 times 17. G317 in Strong's Bible Concordance is the word that means unwillingly, by way of compulsion, by force. On 9/7 in 2001, the Dow was closed at 9,605.85 points. And then on 9/10 and 9/11, it was closed at 9,605.51 points. 4 plus 4 years later, in the first year of the 44th presidency, on 9/11 in 2009, the Dow was closed at 9,605.41 points. The difference between 9,605.85 points and 9,605.41 points is 0.44 points, which identifies the 44th president. Another reason why it is predicted that Kamala Harris will crash near the I-55 and near the X of the eclipses that is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist on the 99th birthday of Malcolm X is that God will be warning of the coming mass demonic possession of those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist that is alluded to in the 9th chapter of the book of Revelation that will be triggered by 5G frequencies. There are about 50 videos related to Harris's predicted crash on this channel that predict that her plane crash will be on February 10th, 2024. Each of these videos tell a different and very important story that everyone needs to know, and these stories are developed through trails of connected signs that led to February 10th, 2024. In other words, the signs connected to February 10th, and then on February 10th, we received the prophetic sign that was expected in advance of February 10th. The prophetic sign on February 10th that was predicted in advance of February 10th was the big news of pop singer Taylor Swift's race across the Pacific Ocean in her private jet so that she could attend the Super Bowl. This prophetic plane sign and the important stories that God is telling that relate to this are explained in the must-watch Swift Super Bowl video. For example, it will be explained how Swift's race across the Pacific in her private plane, with the goal of reaching the Super Bowl in time, points to the Amelia Earhart prophetic sign and her disappearance in a private plane as she was flying across the Pacific Ocean with the goal of becoming the first woman to fly solo around the world. The Amelia Earhart video on this channel will explain how the date of Earhart's plane crash on July 2nd, the date 7/2 in 1937, confirms the addition of 7 times 2 days from Taylor Swift's race across the Pacific Ocean in her private plane on February 10th to reach the date it is predicted that Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash in her private Air Force plane 7 times 2 days later as she flies across the country. After flying across the ocean, Swift landed her plane at LAX Airport in Los Angeles, and Harris is predicted to crash in St. Louis, near where the paths of the 2 great American eclipses will engender an X on her flight path from Washington, D.C. to LAX. What I am saying is that when this prediction comes to pass, you should know that you need to watch every minute of every video on this channel, including all 50 of the videos that tell the different stories from God through different trails of signs that led to February 10th. Then watch the Swift Super Bowl video that explains the signs that occurred on February 10th and how they point to the date of Harris's predicted crash on May 19th. What I am saying is that the videos in which it was predicted that Kamala Harris would die in a plane crash on February 10th are 100% correct. What I am saying is do not skip these videos that are predicting February 10th. they must be watched. If you do not watch these videos and learn about the important stories God has been telling, you will have missed entirely the point of this prediction that is from God for Harris's death in a plane crash. Believe me, I know far better than you why God is giving this prediction, and it is so that you learn the information that is contained in these 50 other videos that predicted February 10th. All right, as the title of this video alludes to, there will be a lot of discussion in this video regarding Super Bowl 58 on February 11th, 2024, and specifically, well, not specifically, but also the Taylor Swift signs, surrounding the Super Bowl. But there is so much more regarding this Super Bowl, but it's all tied together, and there'll be much more discussion than only the Super Bowl in this video. It is God's big picture of signs. This is an example of it being a big picture coming together with many other connections to these signs. But we have to start somewhere to begin describing what God has been, the picture that God has been painting surrounding this Super Bowl and Taylor Swift sign. Prior to February 10th, it was known that God was pointing to this date regarding the predicted death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash with an overwhelming amount of connections from other prophetic signs, profound connections. This is why there are 50 or so videos on this channel that describe the various different trails of signs that were leading to February 10th. February 10th ended up being another step in the trail of signs leading to the predicted event, in this case, the death of Kamala Harris in a plane crash. And the sign we received, which I'll explain more in a minute, was the race across the Pacific Ocean of Taylor Swift in her private plane. Okay, I'll explain why that's relevant. And so let's begin, though, because there's much more going on here on February 10th and the next day, February 11th, the Super Bowl. But her flight across the Pacific Ocean that connects in order to attend the Super Bowl in time connects the date February 10th to February 11th. Okay, so this is an email that I wrote on February 10th describing the initial sign that was learned that God had been communicating through his big picture of signs would happen on this date. We expected a prophetic sign on February 10th related to Harris's predicted plane crash. A big reason for this expectation was that February 10th was exactly 2 times 3 years, which hints at the number 23, after the Israeli F-16, and God uses the number 16 in his signs to hint at 4 times 4 and the 44th president, and God pairs the numbers 23 and 44 together to confirm his big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. And this is how God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections works, which is only being explained on this channel. It works on the principle of second and third and multiple witnesses confirming a matter as the Bible says is required. And this is what makes what is being explained on this channel true and not a product of one's imagination, and different and unique than everything else on the internet that claims to be an analysis of God's prophetic signs. And when we think about it, one simple way in which he would provide a second witness for us is through his signs, is through pairing certain numbers together, such as 23 and 44. Because the 44th president was the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 when he played basketball in high school. Also, 23 hints at 2 divided by 3 equals 666, which is the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. So, that's in a nutshell. There's more to why God pairs 44 and 23. So now that we've gotten the theory out of the way here, we can understand what I'm saying better regarding this. So I'll read it again. A big reason for this expectation was that February 10th was exactly 2 times 3 years, which hints at 23, after the Israeli F-16, which hints at 44, was shot down by Iran and Syria. On February 10th, 2024, the IDF, Israeli Defense Force, announced it had discovered a tunnel shaft next to the UN WRA, but that's a typo. It should be UNRWA, the UN Relief Works Agency School in Gaza. Okay, so this is the agency that only operates in Gaza for the Palestinians. Okay, it's the UN Relief Works Agency. This shaft, okay, but the tunnel was discovered right next to the school. All right, and I'll show a video of this. You can see the location of the entrance to the tunnel is in fact protected by the school. It is part of this school complex, okay? So this shaft led to a 700-meter long tunnel. The tunnel was used as the main intelligence headquarters for Hamas. The tunnel is, and by the way, Hamas in his signs hints at Harris. That's what we have learned from prior other past signs, all right? Which is explained in other videos, including the very important Gaza hospital explosion video. The tunnel is located underneath the main headquarters building of the UNRWA, where the IDF discovered guns, ammunition, and grenades. All right, so after the discovery of the tunnel that leads right under the headquarters building of the UN agency, and that it was discovered that this was the intelligence headquarters for Hamas, and that they were being supplied electricity, for example, from the UN agency main headquarters building. The IDF conducted a raid on the building and discovered guns, ammunition, and grenades. The reason why I wrote in short form here is because I've linked this to the article. I've linked to the article, and this is an email that I originally wrote for friends, assuming that they would have read the article. Okay, so, but it's what I just described. So the shaft was discovered, and then it connected to the tunnel, which was learned that it was the main headquarters for Hamas, and that the tunnel went directly under the UN agency headquarters, and the shaft began right at the UN agency school. Okay, and then they did a raid, and it was discovered that there were guns, ammunition, and grenades inside, even though the UN agency sign outside the building says no guns are allowed. All right. Here we have 2 tunnels. The linked Jerusalem Post article mentions the shaft that leads to the tunnel, making it 2, and later in the article refers to them both as tunnels, plural. Okay? We also have 2 UN agency facilities, the UN agency school and the main UN agency headquarters. The tunnel is 700 meters long. This gives us 2 and 7. This confirms the 2 times 7 days from the Amelia Earhart sign on the 27th, 2 and 7, day of the month, that regarded Earhart's plane crash on the date 7/2, another 2 and 7. So that's one reason or way in which the date February 10th was known ahead of time, is that it was 2 times 7 days after the Amelia Earhart sign, which was the announcement of the discovery of her plane. and her plane crashed on the date 27 and on, as explained more in the must-watch Amelia Earhart video. Okay, this 2 tunnels and 2 UN agency facilities and 700-meter-long tunnel also confirms the additional 2 times 7 days from February 10th to the date of Harris's predicted crash on February 24th. And again, Hamas hints at Harris. And by the way, 2 times 24 equals the 48th president, which is why Kamala Harris will die in a plane crash. It is so that Barack Obama can become the president again, the 48th president, after his wife becomes the 47th president. We learned from prior signs in October and November last year that Hamas hints at Harris. And again, the Israeli IDF sign, this Israeli IDF sign is connected with or to an Israeli IDF plane crash, which was shot down by the enemies of Israel, Iran and Syria, and Iran is behind or backed or supportive, etc., of Hamas. All right. Which implies that this trail of signs is leading to Harris's plane crash, right? What I'm saying with that last sentence is that this is confirmation of the validity of this particular prophetic sign and that it relates to Harris's plane crash because it connects with another Israel war, if you will, sign with the Israeli plane crash, right? Which again was exactly 2 times 3 years earlier, which was a main or one of the main ways in which it was known in advance that February 10th would be important. And lo and behold, we have this important Israel sign. Okay? Now, I'll explain now why this is more important than it first may seem to those that may not have a certain amount of knowledge regarding things and Bible prophecy, etc. In fact, the shaft that led to the tunnel and led to the UN agency main headquarters could be interpreted as symbolic of a trail of prophetic signs that is leading to Harris's predicted plane crash. So what I'm saying here is that the tunnel itself, if you will, is a trail because it's a linear pathway. It's a trail, and it in itself is like a literal symbol for the trail of signs that God is demonstrating leading to Harris's predicted plane crash. And this trail of signs that is leading to Harris's predicted plane crash is in turn leading to Barack Obama becoming the president again, which in turn is leading to Obama heading the UN, hence the meaning of or symbolism for in the UN agency in this sign, and leading to Obama heading the UN and it dividing Israel and persecuting Jews in Israel and Jerusalem. That's where all of this is headed. It is the big transgression that is warned of in Bible prophecy when the world gangs up on Israel, as it has been doing since its rebirth, and has been attempting to divide it and divide God's city, Jerusalem, for which the world will be judged. Okay, and this effort to divide Israel and Jerusalem will be headed by Obama, who will head the UN, this world effort. So that's how this all ties together. That's the prophetic symbolic significance of the UN agency in this sign, which makes this a sign. That's the big thing about this sign. It isn't just another of many events in the Gaza-Israel war, many of which have been prophetic. Don't get me wrong, it's explained in other videos, the other signs. But this particular one is a discovery of the insidiousness, the deceit, the evil of this UN agency that is in fact intertwined with Hamas in Gaza. The big lie. The big lie is that the left is in so the spiritual truth about these things is that the spirit of Antichrist is behind the modern left and the left in general. In the past, not even the modern left, but it is behind socialism. Satan is behind communism, socialism, and the modern left. But Satan is also behind the force behind Islam. And that's why these two ideologies that are otherwise incompatible are joined together and are like sisters. They have the same goal, even though their ideologies don't match each other. They are brothers in arms, socialism and Islam. Okay, so hopefully I've explained that adequately enough. So the tunnel beneath the main headquarters of the UN agency is 18 meters deep. 18 equals 6 plus 6 plus 6, the number of the Antichrist. The IDF destroyed the tunnels, which means they collapsed the tunnels. The collapsing of tunnels in Israel that belonged to Israel's enemy hints at the collapse of the walls of security of Jericho in the Bible. The story of Jericho involves a symbolic 3 sets of 7. Specifically, a 7 followed by a 7 times 7. In this prophetic sign, the tunnel that collapsed was 700 meters, and it connected to the main headquarters of the UN agency. This UN agency, in simple English gematria, the letters UNRWA, equals 77. Thus, we have a 7 and a 77 for a symbolic 3 sets of 7. If you don't know what gematria is, Roman, Greek, and Hebrew letters are also numbers, and as such, names and words can be converted into a numeric value. This 3 sets of 7 sign also confirms the connection to the Earhart sign, as her plane crash was in 37, as in 1937, which hints at 3 sets of 7. All right, the plane sign we expected on February 10th is the news coverage of Taylor Swift's race in her private jet across the Pacific Ocean from Japan to get to the Super Bowl in time. She landed in LAX airport in California. Harris will be on her way to Los Angeles, in fact, likely LAX, when her plane crashes. Either that or she will be departing LAX and returning to Washington, D.C. Otherwise, she just jumped ahead and I already wrote it out anyway. Otherwise, she will be leaving Los Angeles. Apparently, Swift's favorite number is 13, and it is predicted that the MVP of the game will be 49ers player number 13. Well, that didn't pan out, but nonetheless, the number 13 is very relevant regarding this Super Bowl, as we will see as this video progresses. The game will be 13 days before the 49th vice president, as in the 49ers who were playing in the Super Bowl, will die in a plane crash. Swift's flight across the Pacific was 2 times 7 days after the announcement of the discovery of Earhart's plane on the 27th, and this pointed to Earhart's plane crash into the Pacific on the date 7/2. Swift flew swiftly across the Pacific from Japan to California. During World War II, Japanese Americans in California were swiftly put into concentration camps. The Antichrists Francis and Obama, which is hinted at with San Francisco 49ers, and Okinawa, which is where the planes departed on their way to drop the first nuclear bombs. Okay, so Okinawa God has used in his signs to hint at Obama, will likewise swiftly put people in concentration camps. Japan is symbolism for atomic bombs. Swift was on her way from Japan to Las Vegas, and Las Vegas is also symbolic of atomic bombs. The first atomic bomb was tested near Las Vegas, and the first atomic bomb dropped in war was in Japan. In fact, the National Atomic Testing Museum is in Las Vegas, and one of the nicknames for Las Vegas is Atomic City. And of course, Japan symbolizes atomic bombs. Swift's favorite number is 13, and it is also predicted that 13 days after this Super Bowl, in which, oh, by the way, this Chiefs game, this Super Bowl, was her 13th Chiefs game that she had attended this season. All right, so it is well known that she is obsessed with the number 13. She has even painted it on her hand, for example, the number 13. And this was the 13th Chiefs game that she had attended, and essentially that is the big news story of the entire season. Her relationship with the Chiefs tight end player, Travis Kelce, okay? And so it is quite significant that she attended 13 games and she is obsessed with the number 13. And as I am describing here, this is a Taylor Swift Super Bowl sign, and this Super Bowl sign is 13 days. Okay, I'm getting ahead. So, and it is also predicted that 13 days after this Swift Super Bowl sign that she is attending in Las Vegas, a bomb with nuclear material will explode on Manhattan Island. Japan is also an island. Okay, so you see how that ties together again? Because Japan and Las Vegas are symbolic of nuclear weapons, and it is predicted that 13 days after her 13th game in Las Vegas will be the date of the predicted dirty bomb or suitcase nuke with nuclear material will explode on Manhattan Island. The San Francisco 49ers hint at Pope Francis. I should say the San Francisco 49ers hint at Pope Francis. Swift's favorite number is 13, and she was born exactly 409 months, as in 49ers, before she attended a game in which her boyfriend and the Chiefs beat the Dolphins, okay, on the 13th of the month, which was exactly 130 months after Francis was elected Pope on the 13th of the month in 2013. So let's just go over this again. So there's, I'm writing to people that already know what I'm talking about, but there was this prophetic playoff game in which the Chiefs, okay, now Chiefs, by the way, let's get this out of the way, hint at the two antichrists in Revelation chapter 13. The two antichrists, which is symbolic of chiefs, are described in Revelation chapter 13, and that's why the 13th game, for example, for Swift was the Chiefs' Super Bowl win, all right? But in the playoffs, on the date when was that game? I think it was it was the 13th of the month of January. The Chiefs beat the Dolphins. Now, that game was also prophetic for other things, just off the top of my memory. It was it was at kickoff time, it was 4 degrees below, minus 4 degrees, and it was the 4th coldest ever NFL game, which hinted at 44. That's 2 4s. One of the two antichrists, one of the two chiefs, in Revelation 13 is the 44th president. Now, the reason why the number 13 is relevant regarding the Dolphins is because, the Chicago Bears in 85, the 85 Bears, are thought to be the best NFL team in history, but this is interesting, so stay with me here. Okay, so the 85 Bears visited Obama at the White House because back in those days, winning teams didn't automatically get a visit to the president at the White House. So Obama thought to invite them to visit him. The reason why he did that is because he moved to Chicago in 1985 and was a fan and is a Bears fan. He's known to be a Chicago sports fan in general. All right, so that's why he invited the 85 Bears. But the 85 Bears began a cycle, a 30-year cycle, because they won the Super Bowl in 1986, in which all of the major sports teams in Chicago won their sports championships, including 3 teams that broke record droughts and sports curses during the time that Obama was in Washington, D.C., which were the Chicago White Sox, the Chicago Blackhawks, and the Chicago Cubs. The Chicago Cubs were the last. They won the World Series in 2016, 30 years later after 1986, completing the 30 years cycle. In the Bible, 30 years is symbolic of a king. David and Joseph were made kings at the age of 30 years old. And so this is all a hint at the Antichrist king. And the breaking of the sports curses, by the way, hints at the Antichrist curse. Now, when the Cubs visited Obama at the White House, star player number 44 presented the 44th president with jersey number 44 4 days before the 44th president left the White House at the end of his term. Okay? So, anyway, back to the Dolphins and the number 13. The 85 Bears are thought to be the best team ever. However, they lost one game. They were not undefeated. The only undefeated team in NFL history were the 1972 Miami Dolphins, 13 years earlier. The game that the Bears lost, the only game in the season that they lost, was during week number 13 of the NFL season, and it just happened to be to the Miami Dolphins. And the same coach was coaching the Miami Dolphins at that time, who had coached the Dolphins in 1972. That's another prophetic tangent, Don Shula. So the reason why the Bears lost that one game is because of the Miami Dolphins quarterback, number 13. His style of quick passing offense was able to beat the Bears defense, and that's the reason why the Bears were so good that year, is they had a new revolutionary style of defense that the other teams couldn't react to, couldn't respond to. Okay, so but player number 13 was able to beat them because of his unique style of quick passing offense. Number 13. Also in the MVP of the 1972 Dolphins when they won the Super Bowl was number 13. But what's unusual is that that player is the position of safety, which is highly, highly, highly unusual for a safety to win the MVP in a Super Bowl. But that hints at the safety that will be removed with the coming of the Antichrist, who is described in Revelation chapter 13. Now, when the 85 Bears visited Obama at the White House, it was on the Day of Atonement in the Hebrew calendar. The Antichrist will be defeated at the second coming of Lord Jesus Christ on the Day of Atonement in 2024. The Day of Atonement is the 10th day of the 7th month, and not only was the Day of Atonement in 2011 when the Bears visited Obama at the White House, the Day of Atonement in the Hebrew calendar, but it was also October 7th, which hints at the 10th day of the 7th month. And God has used that in his signs, actually. The 10th day of the 7th month. This isn't the only instance in which God has used the 10th day of the 7th month as symbolism for the Day of Atonement. Well, anyway, that Day of Atonement in 2011 with the 85 Bears who lost only one game to the Miami Dolphins. And as I have explained, the Dolphins are associated with the number 13. That Day of Atonement in 2011, and by the way, the 85 Bears also hint at 13 because 8 plus 5 equals 13. That 85 Bears visit to the Antichrist Obama at the White House is exactly 13 years before the Day of Atonement in 2024, when the Antichrist will be defeated at the return of Lord Jesus Christ. And there you have it. That is the prophetic significance of all of this. Now, having gotten that out of the way, we can understand this now, which is that game in which the Chiefs, which hints at the Revelation 13 Antichrists, against the Dolphins, which hints at number 13 on the 13th of the month, was exactly 130, which hints at 13 months after Pope Francis was elected Pope on the 13th of the month in 2013. So you see how God cleverly did that with the Chiefs and the Dolphins, exactly 130 months after Francis was elected. Okay, and then the Chiefs went on to play the Francisco 49ers in the Super Bowl. Okay, all right, so now that we've gotten that explained, Swift was born exactly 23 years and 90 days. Okay, and that's a pairing of 9 and 23. God pairs 9 and 23 in his signs because the Antichrist became the president in 2009. The number 9 is the most important number in God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel as from the Bible. The number 9 symbolizes God's judgment, and the number 23 is the 9th prime number. And God pairs 9 and 23 because the president of the Antichrist became president in 2009 and was the basketball president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. And also the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist is alluded to in Ezekiel chapter 9 in the Bible, and the mark of the Antichrist changes one's 23 chromosomes. Okay. All right. So Swift was born 23 years and 90 days. This is a common way in which this is typical of a connection that God would use. All right. Before Francis was elected. And again, Francis was elected on the 13th day in 2013, and he is described in Revelation chapter 13. And Swift is obsessed with the number 13, and she attended 13 Chiefs games. All right? All right. So Swift was born 23 years and 9 months before Francis was elected. At the time of the kickoff, the temperature was -4, making it the 4th coldest game in NFL history. Okay, she was at that game, no doubt. This hinted at the 44th chief of the U.S. Additionally, the first score of the game, of the Super Bowl, was made by player number 4, who had 4 plus 4 receptions in the game and averaged 4 times 4 yards. Number 4's 8 receptions hinted at the 48th chief of the U.S. The 13th prime number is 41. And the coach of the San Francisco 49ers was born exactly 41 years before the first American took the thing, which is the mark of the Antichrist. And when this prediction comes to pass, it will prove this. And this is the reason why God has given me a voice with this prediction. It is the reason for the prediction. And believe me, I know far better than you why, the purpose of this prediction. It is to prove what I have just said. The commonly held objections that people have based on their understanding of Bible prophecy will be proven to be incorrect when the prediction comes to pass. And for the answers to those commonly held objections, watch the snake bite video on this channel. Okay, it is a must watch, obviously, the snake bite video. The thing is the mark of the Antichrist. It is not a supposed precursor to the mark of the Antichrist. It is the mark of the Antichrist in its current form. It does not need an additional something to go with it, such as an additional technology or a false form of religious worship. Taking it is a false form of religious worship, and it does not need a supposed new age of dispensation after supposedly, quote-unquote, all Christians will be raptured. In fact, the reason why most quote-unquote Christians have already taken the mark of the Antichrist is in fact judgment for this particular doctrine of dispensationalism. All right, enough said. Let's move on. The reason, so the reason for these instances of the number 13 in context of SWIFT, San Francisco, and the Chiefs is it hints at the $13 of the 54th Regiment, or that the 54th Regiment wasn't paid. The 54th Massachusetts Regiment, the first black regiment in the Civil War, were not paid the $13 that the other white Union soldiers were paid, official policy from Washington, D.C., and this was an example of oppressive minority law. The Antichrist chiefs will enforce the mark of the Antichrist through money, through digital currency. Only those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist will be permitted to use the government-controlled digital currency to buy and sell food. The name of the banking system that coordinates digital money transfers is SWIFT. The mark of the Antichrist is the thing, and this is why Swift's boyfriend, Travis Kelce, starred in a recent commercial promoting the thing for Pfizer. Kelce, in English gematria, is 216, which equals 6 times 6 times 6, and hints at 666, the number of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. Kelce wears number 87 on his jersey, and the Pope turned 87, 8 times 7 days, before Kelce's performance in the Super Bowl. This is why Swift was born exactly 23 years and 90 days, which hints at 23 chromosomes in Ezekiel chapter 9, the thing, before Francis was elected Pope. In fact, here's another thing. The word that begins with a V and ends with an S, right? In Latin is actually venom. Okay, that's right. So venom in Latin is where the word the word begins with a vir and it ends with an us, right? Okay, and that's venom in Latin. Of course, Latin is associated with Rome and Pope Francis. Now, the word for corona in Latin means the mitre, the ring around the crown, around the Pope's hat. The funny hat that the Pope wears, the gold band around the crown of the hat, the word for it is mitre. And so the word coron and then ends with an ona, and the word vir and ends with an us can be translated in Latin as Pope's venom. And that's because the 23 chromosomes that are changed as a result of taking the thing are changed with snake chromosomes. The protruding amino acid chain that is associated with this vir and ends with an us is in fact snake chromosomes. Okay, and the thing contains the synthesized snake chromosomes, which are inserted into one's chromosomes. Okay, and of course the snake is the big symbol of evil, and this is why Satan wants to put his chromosomes into people, thus making it a spiritual abomination and the mark of the Antichrist. The other reason it is a spiritual abomination is, of course, that it uses cells from unborn people, all right, in its development. Okay. So, all right, so you can see here, so Kelce, the reason why Swift is hooked up with this Kelce guy is because he's promoted the thing in the commercials this year for Pfizer, for this company, right? All right. So, the San Francisco 49ers are named, that's huge, by the way. That last paragraph is huge. If you got that, okay? Because SWIFT is the name of the banking system And that's why the number 13 is because God has been using this theme in his signs of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment that weren't paid the $13, which was an example of oppressive minority law, which is exactly what will happen, is that only those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist will be permitted to buy and sell food, the rationed food that will be restricted through the digital currency and the SWIFT system. And this will be conducted in the headquarters of this system in Rome, as described in Bible prophecy, and that is why Francis is associated with all of this as well. Okay, so the San Francisco 49ers are named after the gold rush in 1849. The colors of their uniform includes gold. Gold is God's currency that cannot be manipulated or controlled by a centralized authority. Bible prophecy uses descriptions of gold to identify the Antichrist and Mystery Babylon as being Rome and Catholicism. It is very, very clear, folks, from Bible prophecy. It is a true mystery to me how it is not known by people even claiming to be interested in Bible prophecy, let alone it should be known by all Protestants. Furthermore, there wouldn't have been a Protestant Reformation had it not been for the understanding that the Pope is the Antichrist. And no, I'm sorry to conservative Catholics listening to this, it isn't this particular bad Pope. All popes have been Antichrists, lowercase a, throughout all of history. The office of papacy is blasphemy. This is why it was inevitable from the very beginning that the Pope or a Pope would be the Antichrist. I'm not saying that God hates Catholics. What I'm saying is that God hates Catholicism. He absolutely hates Catholicism, which is paganism wrapped in a wrapper that makes it appear like Christianity. And the big thing that God was constantly chastising the Jews for, the thing that God hates the most, as clear in the Bible, is the mixing of true religion with the pagan false religion, which is exactly the definition of Catholicism. All right. And I'm not saying Catholics can't be saved. I'm not saying I or God hates Catholics. So, okay, this isn't anti-Catholic, it's anti-Catholicism. The woman has arrayed in purple and scarlet. Okay, so this is a quote from Bible prophecy. The woman was arrayed in purple and scarlet, which of course is the colors of the cardinals, and adorned with gold and jewels and pearls. Cardinals wear these gold jewels around their neck of a cross, which is, by the way, a mocking of the cross on which Jesus was crucified, because the price that he paid on the cross is priceless. And they've adorned themselves with crosses of jewels and gold. Okay, which is why God mentions it in this prophecy, because God hates that. All right? All Catholics, or most of them, wear these gold crosses on their necks too, which is, I don't. In my opinion, that's not good either. But specifically the cardinals too, with their jewels and gold and all that on their necks, the ones wearing purple and scarlet. Okay, holding in your hand a golden cup full of abominations. Now the Catholics worship the Mass; they worship the piece of bread as if it's Jesus, and that's an abomination. And it's done with these golden cups. Okay, and the impurities of her sexual immorality, that's a metaphor for mixing the false religion with true religion. All right, sexual immorality, that's what the metaphor is in the Bible, not even just this example right here. Okay, and that's why the Pope and popes have been attempting, especially in the last 100 years, to bring all of the world's religions together under one umbrella. Roman Catholicism, sexual immorality. Alas, alas! The great city that was clothed with fine linen, in purple and scarlet, adorned with gold. And by the way, Rome was known for its production of scarlet cloth, fine linen. All right, adorned with gold. Catholics and cardinals are adorned with gold, jewels, and pearls. Revelation 18. Okay. Talking about Mystery Babylon. And that's just scratching the surface of the beyond clear prophecies that clearly identify Rome, all right? Now, Bible prophecy also uses descriptions of ancient Rome and its commerce as symbolism that points to the rationing of food by the system headquartered in Rome, through commerce and payments. This rationing of food that is alluded to in Revelation chapter 6. This is why, for example, the UN headquarters for the World Food Program and the Food and Agricultural Organization are headquartered coincidentally in Rome, not coincidentally, right near the Vatican. That's because those are the organizations that the Pope and the two Antichrists will lead in the rationing of the food in the coming months. Okay, and like I'm saying, it will be rationed to those who have taken the mark of the Antichrist. The two chiefs, Francis and Obama, met at the White House exactly 49 prophetic years, which is a 12-month year made of 30 days each, after the Jews recaptured East Jerusalem and the Temple Mount. The chiefs, Francis and Obama, met 100 months and 19 days, which hints at 9/11, after the Chiefs before the Chiefs play the San Francisco in the Super Bowl. Swift hurried after a concert in Japan to make it to the Super Bowl, which will be 203 days after Swift fans in a stadium in the 42nd state, and 42 is the number associated with the Antichrist in Bible prophecy, caused a 2.3, hence the 203 days, magnitude earthquake at her concert. It was called the Swift Quake. It was the same location as the Beast Quake, which is another prophetic sign. I'm getting ahead of myself. Okay, in the news coverage of the Swift Quake, the media mentioned the Beast Quake. Okay, the beast is the metaphor for the Antichrist in Bible prophecy in Revelation chapter 13. This beast quake that was caused by fans, just like the Swift quake, in the stadium of a football game in the 42nd state. The two chief Antichrists met in the White House garden on the Day of Atonement in 2015, exactly 9 years, which symbolizes judgment, the number 9, before Judgment Day, and their defeat on the Day of Atonement in 2024. Mass shootings are symbolic of things, right? The shots in a shooting is symbolic of the thing. A gunshot is symbolic of a thing that comes out of a thing and goes into people, right? The bullets that come out of guns and go into people are symbolic of the thing that comes out of a thing and goes into people. The mass shootings are symbolic of the thing, the mark of the Antichrist, that's causing the mass deaths. The deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history at the Route 91 concert, that was the name of it, which hinted at 9/11, as explained in the other Las Vegas shooting video, which is an amazing video. Make sure you watch it. Find it on the channel. All right, so the deadliest mass shooting in U.S. history at the Route 91 concert in Las Vegas was on the Day of Atonement in 2017. Exactly 7 years, which is extremely prophetic because the most central prophecy in the Bible, Daniel chapter 9, involves a 7-year period that is symbolic and only symbolic of the period of the Antichrist. We are already near the end of the 7 years, which began in 2017. That's why Trump trumpeted at that time. Okay, anyway, long story. There's so many symbolic beginnings of the 7 years. But anyway, one of them is this, which was the deadliest shooting, which is symbolic of the thing, the mark of the Antichrist, on the Day of Atonement in 2017, exactly 7 years before Judgment Day in 2024. The Day of Atonement, when the Antichrist will be defeated on the Temple Mount. An employee named Jesus, first discovered the shooter. He was the first to discover the shooter and took some heroic action. Now, I forget the details, but the shooting occurred on Jimmy Carter's 93rd birthday. 93 represents the time Jesus was on the cross, from the 3rd hour until the 9th hour. Jimmy Carter is JC initials. Okay, the initials for Jimmy Carter, JC, Jesus Christ. 93 also hints at 3 nines, and God often repeats a number 3 times for emphasis of its symbolic meaning, and the number 9 symbolizes judgment. The shooter was on the 32nd floor. Okay, Obama in simple English gematria equals 32. It's also a reflection of 23, the number he wore in high school. Okay, and also 32 is 4 times 8, which hints at the 48th president, Obama, which is why the shooter on the 32nd floor, 7 years exactly before the 48th president will be defeated at the Lord's second coming on the Temple Mount on the Day of Atonement. And the Temple Mount is symbolic of a high place, and so is the 32nd floor, and from this hotel from which the shooter shot down from on the crowd at ground level in the concert. Okay, so the shooter was on the 32nd floor of the Mandalay Bay Hotel. The shooter was in a high place, and Bama in Hebrew means high place. The Las Vegas shooter killed 58 people, and he was born on the date 4-9. The 49ers will play in Super Bowl 58 in Las Vegas. The shooter was born in Clinton, Iowa. The shooter shot people at the Toby Keith concert, and Keith was born in Clinton, Oklahoma. The area code for Clinton, Oklahoma is 580, which is reduced to 58, which hints at Super Bowl 58. The shot, which is symbolic of the mark, gives people, okay, so it gives people this thing here, which begins with a can and ends with a sir. Okay? And Toby Keith died from this thing that begins with a can and ends with a sir 2 times 3 days before the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. The star running back for San Francisco, Christian McCaffrey, wears jersey number 23. I forgot to follow up and see if there was a prophetic sign involving Christian McCaffrey. I wouldn't be surprised. But anyway, again, Toby Keith was the musician at the time of the shooting in Las Vegas, and he died 2 times 3 days, which hints at 23, before the Las Vegas Super Bowl. And that's relevant because the place that he was born hints at Super Bowl 58. And the shooter was also born in a town with the same name that Keith was born in. And what I didn't mention here is Clinton hints at the Bill Clinton president, the 42nd president. And 42, as I mentioned earlier, is the number that symbolizes the Antichrist in Bible prophecy. So you got all that? Okay, so we've got just some amazing confirmation here of the relevance of the shooting, and God is incorporating, he's pointing back to the deadliest shooting, and he's saying, look, 7 years later I'm returning, it's the day, that's Judgment Day, when the Antichrists will be defeated, these Antichrists who will be enforcing the mark of the Antichrist, which is symbolized with the shootings, with the shooting that killed 58 people, hence Super Bowl 58. The Mandalay Bay shooting in Las Vegas occurred exactly 6 years and 66 days before the UNLV shooting in Las Vegas on December 6th, this last year, and 12/6 hints at 1,260, which is the number mentioned 7 times in Bible prophecy associated with the Antichrist. The UNLV shooting is 9 weeks and 4 days, which hints at 49ers, before the 49ers will play in the Super Bowl. This is also 67 days. The UNLV shooter, Tony Polito, was 67. The two chiefs met in the White House garden exactly 49 prophetic years after East Jerusalem was recaptured on the date 6/7 in 1967. And again, their meeting is exactly 9 years before the Day of Atonement and their defeat on Judgment Day. And the number 9 symbolizes judgment. Swift flew her plane to LAX. LAX hints at X, which is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist that will be enforced through the SWIFT banking system. Kamala Harris's plane will crash on her way to LAX, and it will crash near where the eclipses will engender an X over the nation. Amazing. The Super Bowl will be Swift's 13th Chiefs game she attended this year, confirming the 13 days to Harris's crash and the bomb in New York, and the chief antichrists in Revelation chapter 13, and the 4 years to Super Bowl 54, the 54th, which hinted at the 54th Regiment, and the $13, which hints at the Swift banking system, as I have explained. Swift has worn number 13 on her hand, and she wears a number 13 necklace. Her 13th game this season was Super Bowl 58, and 5 plus 8 equals 13. Swift's 6th album won Album of the Year at the 66th Grammy Awards. This was the Sunday before Super Bowl Sunday in Sin City. This was just recently, all right? The recent Grammy Awards were the 66th Grammy Awards, and Swift's 6th album won Album of the Year. That is astounding. This was the Sunday before, in other words, 1 week before, Super Bowl Sunday in Sin City in the 36th state, which hints at 666, because it hints at 3 sixes, and it's 36 is 6 times 6, and also the 36th triangular number, which in a triangle of numbers, the last number in the 36th row is 666, and 1 plus 2 plus 3 plus 4 all the way up to 36 equals 666. All right, so Nevada is the 36th state, and Las Vegas is known as Sin City, and the man of sin, described in Bible prophecy, is associated with the number 666. Okay, and the game began at 6:30, which also hints at 666. The game was played in Allegiant Stadium, which hints at allegiance to the Antichrist and the mark 666. Described in Bible prophecy, those taking the mark are pledging allegiance spiritually to the Antichrist. I should say those who have taken the mark already have demonstrated an allegiance to the Antichrist. I'll just go over a couple other things as to why this mark of the Antichrist is so unrighteous, and those that have taken it have already committed gross unrighteousness, because doing so, it's not about the person, it's also about other people. It's also about others. And when one does these things, when one complies with these unrighteous dictates, it enables the system. It reinforces the system. If the 70% of the people that are not hypnotized in the mass totalitarian movement were to simply say no and resist, the totalitarian movement would dissolve and it would be done. But when the 40% in the middle, because 30% are fighting back, 30% are hypnotized, and the 40% in the middle, if they would just join the 30% and say no, it'd be over. All right? But when people take it in order to keep their job or go on a vacation, be able to travel, in other words, for convenience, it is tantamount to denying Jesus because of the things that I stated earlier, including the fact, and it should be known by all quote-unquote Christians already, that all of these things use the things from unborn people. Okay? That's number one, all right? But anyway, when you take it, you also enable a system that forces and coerces and bullies other people to take it. So you are participating in the evil movement. Okay? So that's why that's okay. So that's why you are pledging allegiance to this movement when you do it. When you put on the thing that on your face that begins with an M and ends with a K. You are participating in the evil. And yes, the thing that begins with an M and ends with a K is evil, and wearing it is symbolic of evil and symbolic of allegiance to the Antichrist system. Even if you're wearing it in church, especially if you are wearing it in church. All right. Now, the prediction being made in this video will prove what I am saying. If you don't have the wisdom to recognize that, just, trust what I'm saying based on the prediction. All right. What can I tell you? Travis Kelce promoted The Thing in commercials this year. SWIFT equals Swift banking system, symbolic of digital currency that will be used to enforce the thing. God uses records for signs. The first score of the game was a Super Bowl record, a 55-yard field goal. Travis hints at Elvis, and Elvis lived in his estate near the I-55 highway. That's relevant. It's explained in other videos, okay? So it's very relevant. The 55 hinting at the 50 highway, if I-55, that goes from Chicago to Little Egypt and Memphis, Tennessee, and Graceland, where the King's Palace is, and on, which is symbolic of the Temple Mount, okay? And by the way, Martin Luther King was shot right near Graceland, and on. After the game, Travis shouted twice, actually, "Viva Las Vegas." That's an Elvis phrase. Clearly, everyone knows that, right? All right, so Travis hints at Elvis. And Travis promoted The Thing in commercials this year. Okay? And his girlfriend is Swift, which hints at the Swift banking system that will be used to enforce the thing. Okay? Now, he said "Viva Las Vegas" on the stage to the world. He shouted it twice. That's because Elvis played. Okay, well, Elvis is also known for playing in Vegas. So Travis played in the Super Bowl in Vegas and shouted "Viva Las Vegas" twice, giving it a second witness. And Elvis is known for playing concerts in Vegas. So they both played in Vegas. Elvis played a big role in Americans first accepting the thing. When he took the polio thing before going on stage, as in Travis Kelce on the stage in Las Vegas, shouting "Viva Las Vegas," right before Elvis went onto the stage at the Ed Sullivan Show, he took the thing in front of the press, and this was, according to what you can read, because of course I'm too young to know this firsthand, but prior to this, the baby boomer generation was not interested in taking things. But this was at the beginning of the baby boomer generation. They were very easily influenced. I'm not coming up with the right word, but anyway, they were impressionable. They were at a young age, and they were impressionable, and they were obsessed with Elvis. The first people, the first members of the baby boomer generation. Of course, the baby boomer generation is the driving force in American culture ever since they've been born, right? That's another story. And so anyway, the thing was first accepted in American culture when the baby boomers accepted it because of Elvis. All right? At the Ed Sullivan Show. All right. Now, in other words, what I'm saying so far is that Travis Kelce on the stage in Vegas hints at Elvis on stage at the Ed Sullivan Show. This was near the beginning of the rise of Elvis too, in his popularity. All right. Okay. And the reason why Elvis took the thing on just in front of the press is because the state of New York was there was an organization that was conducting a promotion drive to get people to be more to get young people to be more accepting of taking this polio thing. All right. Okay, and so that's why they chose to have Elvis do this in front of the press, so that this generation could see that it was cool enough to do this. All right. Okay, so it was huge. It was a pivotal moment in the history of the thing, in other words. Huge moment in the history of the thing and the thing industry, which has led to the mark of the Antichrist, ultimately. Here we are today, after all these years, but this was the beginning of it. Now, Stephen Colbert got a standing ovation at the Ed Sullivan Theater, which is exactly where Elvis was on stage, at the Ed Sullivan Theater. Okay, so Stephen Colbert, this famous wicked man that spouts evil every night on television, this Stephen Colbert got a standing ovation in the Ed Sullivan Theater when he mocked Trump after the news of his first indictment. Okay, Colbert said he had received the news 3 minutes before coming on stage. The next day, 3 people died in a tornado in Sullivan County, as in the Ed Sullivan Theater and the 3 minutes. On the same night that the roof collapsed at the Apollo Theater due to the same weather system in Chicago. Okay, Apollo hints at Apollyon. It's the same word, which is in the New Testament in Revelation chapter 9, and it means father of destruction. It's a name for Satan. The heavy metal bands playing that night in the Apollo Theater in Chicago, the home of the Antichrist, were Morbid Angel, and that's Revelation 9. Because in that chapter, Apollyon is leading the angels out of the pit of hell, the fallen angels. And the other band was Revocation, which hints at Revelation. Stunning, stunning, stunning. The 2 heavy metal bands, which is evil music. Sorry for supposed Christian heavy metal bands. That's an oxymoron. All right, I don't want to. I shouldn't have said that. Anyway, the heavy metal bands playing that night were Morbid Angel and Revocation. All right. Which hints at Apollyon and Revelation chapter 9 and the fallen angels and the book of Revelation. Okay, so the first call to 9/11 for this roof collapse at the Apollo Theater was a mass casualty event, which hinted at the thing, which has caused a mass casualty. Mass casualties, okay? But 1 person died. The day of the Sullivan tornado and theater roof collapse due to winds was 317 days before Travis shouted "Viva Las Vegas." And because Travis is associated with Elvis. Okay, this is because G317, as in the 317 days connection, the 317th word in Strong's Greek Concordance is the word that means by way of compulsion, unwillingly, by force, necessarily. Which is why God uses this in his connections and signs related to the thing and taking the thing, the mark of the Antichrist. Right? The Ed Sullivan Theater in Manhattan is 13 stories. Travis's girlfriend equals 13, as we've seen. She's attended 13 games. She's obsessed with 13, etc. Born before the Pope was elected, right? On the 13th day and all that, right? So Travis's girlfriend equals 13, and Travis shouted "Viva Las Vegas." And the thing will be enforced through digital currency, which is symbolized by the $13 of the 54th Regiment that the 54th Regiment were not paid, which is why their first score of the game was the record 55-yard field goal by player number 4, which hints at 54. And why the game was a rematch, the Chiefs and the 49ers, of Super Bowl 54, which was a big sign, which I'm not going to get into right here, that pointed to the thing and the 54th Massachusetts Regiment. All right, and we have a rematch of the 54th Massachusetts Regiment Super Bowl 54. The Ed Sullivan Theater was previously called the Manhattan Theater and also CBS Radio Playhouse 3. These were the former names of the Ed Sullivan Theater before it was named Ed Sullivan Theater, which is why 3 people were killed in the Sullivan County tornado after Colbert's mocking of Trump at God's trumpet, that uses trumpet and highlighted signs, 3 minutes after learning about the indictment. Elvis played in Las Vegas. Travis played for the Chiefs in Las Vegas, and the Chiefs play in the city with the area code 816. Elvis died on the date 816, August 16th. These connections point to the Ed Sullivan Theater in Manhattan, formerly named the Manhattan Theater, which is 13 stories. Travis's girlfriend equals 13. He won Super Bowl 58, which hints at 5 plus 8 equals 13. And this confirms that 13 days later will be the predicted explosion of a bomb in Manhattan. In connection between Travis and Elvis, we have 3 deaths in Sullivan County. After Colbert's ovation 3 minutes after he learned about Trumpet in the Ed Sullivan Theater, formerly named CBS Radio Playhouse 3. Travis's Chiefs won by 3 points. They won their 3rd Super Bowl Travis did anyway, and so did his coach and his quarterback. They won their 3rd Super Bowl win by 3 points. And a field goal is 3 points. And a big part of the game were the many field goals, 2 of which were records. The MVP of the game, Patrick Mahomes, won the game with a 3-yard pass from the 3-yard line in the game played in Allegiant Stadium, located at 3333 Al Davis Way. The game was tied with 3 seconds remaining on the clock, and then the game was won which went into overtime, and then the game was won with 3 seconds on the clock in overtime. Also, 3 Kansas City Chiefs fans were found frozen to death on January 19th, 33 days before the Super Bowl that was attended by Swift and her friend, rapper Ice Spice. Okay, so what I'm getting at here is these 3s are confirming the 3 deaths in Sullivan County, which confirms the connections, the big picture connection between Travis and Elvis. Okay, you're starting to get it all here, all of these confirmations. In the Super Bowl, the San Francisco 49ers were attempting to become the 3rd team to win 6 Super Bowls, which points to Francis, as in San Francisco, which points to Francis 666, one of the chief antichrists. In other words, it identifies Francis. Again, the San Francisco 49ers were attempting to become the 3rd team to win 6 Super Bowls, which hints at 666, thus identifying Francis as the Antichrist, whose number is 666, one of the chief antichrists. The other chief antichrist is the 44th president, who will replace the 49th vice president and serve a 3rd term after she is lost in a plane crash, which is why the chief coach of the 49ers is 44 years old, and the first down of the game was made by 49ers number 44. The second and third first downs were made by 49ers number 23, a pairing of 23 and 44. And this is why the 49ers lost. It's hinting at the loss of the 49th vice president, which will lead to the rise of the 44th president and his 3rd term. Therefore, the attempt to become the 3rd team to win 6 Super Bowls was the sign. Their not becoming the 3rd team to win 6 Super Bowls enabled these other signs that would have not been possible had the 49ers won. All right, because as usual, when it comes to attempting to analyze in advance the outcome of sports games, God always has something more complex, deeper, and more elaborate than what we can perceive ahead of time. All right? This is because prior to the game, I believed with confidence that it was obvious that the 49ers would become the 3rd team to win 6 Super Bowls because it would identify Francis as the Antichrist. However, like I'm saying here, the sign in itself was the third attempt to win 6 Super Bowls. That is enough. By allowing the Chiefs to win and the 49ers to lose, it enabled all of these other signs that I'm talking about in this video, which wouldn't have been possible had the 49ers won. All right? So it was a hint. The attempt to win 3 Super Bowls, or to attempt to become the third team to win 6 Super Bowls, was enough of a 666 sign. All right. I do not believe that it is possible that the 49ers will win next year instead, even though the game is scheduled to be played in the 18th state, 6 plus 6 plus 6. Their attempt to become the third to win 6 in Sin City in the 36th state was the sign, and it pointed to Francis, which was the purpose of the sign. Having said that, the implication would be that the reason why God's web of signs that centers on atonement this year makes it the beginning of 7 years of tribulation, but for countless reasons regarding his signs, this is impossible in my mind. It is impossible. It would mean that the Antichrist will be 94 years old when he is defeated, for one thing. This will not happen. The second coming is on the Day of Atonement in 2024. When the prediction comes to pass, it will prove this, because it will prove that this is God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is being explained only on this channel. And it is an interconnected web, and the center of the web is the Day of Atonement, October 12th, 2024, the day of the second coming. That is the purpose of this prediction. Make no mistake. It is the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction. It is to prove that the second coming is on the Day of Atonement in 2024. Case closed. No more debate. No more discussion about a supposed beginning of a Daniel 70th week, etc. For those that know what I'm talking about. It has already begun, and the thousands of signs, I don't know, hundreds and hundreds of clear signs that Jesus commanded us to be watching for, overwhelmingly, beyond a doubt, to confirm this. I've only mentioned a few. I mentioned the 9 years and the 13 years, for example. That's just not even scratching the surface. All right? The symbolic 70th 7 began in 2017. Case closed. All right? End of discussion. The second coming is much sooner than people realize. And this is the purpose of this prediction. Otherwise, to not appreciate this is to miss entirely the point of this prediction. And like I say, you might as well stop the video now. You are wasting your time to not appreciate this. Okay? Okay, so that's that. There won't be another Super Bowl next year, right? In which the 49ers become the third team to win 6 Super Bowls. It's not going to happen. The sign was this year. That's why it was Sin City and the 36th state, etc. And the number 13 and everything, okay? The Chiefs equal 50, as I've explained before. Well, okay, let me see. So the Chiefs won their first... they went to the Super Bowl, won their first Super Bowl in literally 50 years, okay? That was the 2020 Super Bowl. It was against the 49ers, which gives us the Omer count of 49 and 50 days to Pentecost, which means literally 50th day. The Chiefs' colors, fire, orange and red, okay? Fire symbolizes Pentecost, the tongues of fire on the Pentecost. Also, when they won that Super Bowl, the main headline was how the quarterback caught fire at the end of the game. Before the Super Bowl, the quarterback auctioned off his firefighter helmet for charity on eBay. Also, it was said that the 2 halftime performers, Shakira and J-Lo, were on fire. A national news story after the game was how a Kansas City Chiefs fan caught himself accidentally on fire. Okay? All right. So the Chiefs equal 50, and that's just actually scratching the surface, okay? Because there's also the Hutchinson, Kansas earthquakes, which I'm not going to talk about here. The day of the Chiefs winning in Kansas City, right near the earthquake, on their way to the Super Bowl, hints at Ann Hutchinson, the leader of the Free Grace movement, which is widespread today, this theology for which Ann Hutchinson and her followers were banished from the spiritual founding of America and the colony in Boston, and then they were later murdered by Native Indians. God is saying in his signs that he hates this doctrine, and it is the Nicolaitan doctrine of our day. And it comes in the package of dispensationalism, free grace, and it is Calvinism also, which is sovereign grace. And they both lead to once saved, always saved. And so the Chiefs and other things, including our righteousness is as filthy rags, one verse that Luther took out of context and twisted to support his heretical theology. All right? And so anyway, the Chiefs' signs here are, in fact, judgment warning for the church. This is why 50 days after this win for the Chiefs will be the day of the predicted fire from the sun. Okay? That's April 1st. The solar flare that will knock out the nation's power grid, which will lead to food rationing and the enforcement of the mark of the Antichrist through rationed food and digital currency. That's why this game is 50 days, because the Chiefs that symbolize fire, and it is ultimately persecution of the church. This is judgment warning for the church, and God hates the Nicolaitan doctrine, as he said in Revelation chapter 2, and he's coming to make war with the sword of his mouth on those that teach and have the works that are a product of this doctrine, which is widespread today in the last days. In the last couple of decades, this doctrine has become widespread in the church, and that's why it is the do-nothing church, the American evangelical church. That is supposedly past tense, already saved. Okay, this will fulfill Revelation 8:7, this fire from the sun, which is why Travis Kelce is number 87. Another way to interpret this is the first verse of Revelation 8 is the seventh seal that is opened. Okay, and it was learned last night before the Chiefs won that April 1st is the date of the solar flare that will knock out the power. Okay. So anyway, this could also be interpreted as the Revelation 8 seventh seal, which is then leads to all of these seven trumpets after that. The seventh seal is the rapture in Revelation chapter 7. If you in my opinion, if you read that correctly, the description of the rapture is the seventh seal, but it happens right before the seventh seal is opened. So, but that's just symbolism. The whole book of Revelation cannot be interpreted literally like most people think. It's all like dreamlike. It's all symbolism. So it's easily interpreted as being the rapture. But regardless, it doesn't really matter. Let's move on. But the 144,000 is symbolism for those that will be raptured. The Chiefs, okay, I already read that. The 49ers chief coach is 44 years old. He rose in prominence as the offensive coordinator for the Atlanta Falcons in 2016. The team played in the Super Bowl that season, which was the only other time besides this year that a Super Bowl went into overtime. That Super Bowl was Super Bowl 51, which, by the way, is 3 times 17, which hints at 317. The word in the concordance that means unwilling, by force, compulsion, etc. Okay, so Super Bowl 51, which is known for the GOAT of football, Tom Brady, and the Patriots staging the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history, and that hinted at the predicted great comeback of the 44th president as the 51st vice president. That's what that Super Bowl is all about. That's why the greatest comeback in Super Bowl history of the GOAT was Super Bowl 51, is because the comeback of Obama will be him becoming the 51st vice president when he is appointed the 51st vice president by Michelle Obama. And by the way, that's predicted to be on the date 3/6, 3/6s, March 6th. It is amazing that on the same day as the Super Bowl in Las Vegas, Sin City, news broke that the GOAT, Tom Brady, okay, which is why he won 7 out of 10 Super Bowls, by the way, because the ancient Jews would conduct a ritual sacrifice on the Day of Atonement, which is the 10th day of the 7th month, and it would involve a goat. That's why the GOAT of football won 7 out of 10 Super Bowl appearances, right? And so, but coincidentally, completely coincidentally, it's stunning. It's obviously by God. There's this news story that comes out on a Sunday, Super Bowl Sunday. Why would it be released on this day? But it was, and anyway, Tom Brady, and it has nothing to do with the fact that it involves Las Vegas. The reason why the news story broke on this day, it just broke on this day because of the events that are behind the story. Okay, so it is amazing that on this same day as the Super Bowl in Las Vegas, in Sin City, and by the way, the goats were used in atonement for sin in the ritual on the Temple Mount. In Sin City, the news that the GOAT, greatest of all time, who won 7 Super Bowls, was finally cleared to acquire 7% of the Las Vegas Raiders football team. Okay, this happened on the same day as the Super Bowl in Las Vegas. The delay in confirming this was due to a reassessment of the team's value, which is now valued at $5.8 billion. And this news broke on the day of Super Bowl 58. And 8 plus 5 equals 13. And the GOAT, Antichrist, is described in Revelation 13. Okay, the GOAT, who has won 7 Super Bowls, holds the most Super Bowl records. And in this Super Bowl, 7 field goals were kicked, many by player number 7, and he kicked the record longest field goal in a Super Bowl that was broken twice. What I mean to say is that the record for longest Super Bowl field goal was broken twice in the same game. The first one I already mentioned, the 55-yard one, but then player number 7 broke it again, okay, with his 57-yard field goal. In this acquisition of the Las Vegas football team, Brady is part of a group that includes a company founded by a man named Wagner. This is because the record 55-yard field goal kicked by player number 4 hints at the 54th Regiment that were not paid $13, who valiantly fought at Fort Wagner. The Russian general of the Wagner group died in a plane crash 171 days before this news regarding Brady's group that includes Wagner. 171 is the 18th triangular number, and that hints at 6 plus 6 plus 6, the number of the Antichrist. The Brady and Wagner news story is about an amount of money to be paid. This connection hints at the 54th Regiment and the $13, the amount of money that they weren't paid, and it is more confirmation of the 13 days connection from the Super Bowl on February 11th to the date it is predicted that, like Wagner, like the Russian general of the Wagner group, Harris will die in a plane crash. Houston, Texas is Harris County. On the day of the Super Bowl in Sin City, there was an attempted mass shooting. Again, it's already connected to the mass shooting, as I mentioned, in Las Vegas. Now, on the day of the Super Bowl in Sin City, there was an attempted mass shooting. And again, this Super Bowl is symbolic of the thing. The bullets that come out of guns and go into people are symbolic of the thing that comes out of things and go into people. Okay, and the Super Bowl was all about that, as I've been explaining. But also on this day was a famous or infamous mass shooting at the famous Joel Osteen megachurch in Houston, Harris County. The woman shooter, as in Kamala Harris, the woman vice president, was killed. This hints at the death of the woman vice president, Kamala Harris, 13 days later. As has been explained, this Super Bowl pointed to the mark of the Antichrist, which is the SHOs, and mass shootings symbolize the SHOs. The score at halftime was 10-3, which hinted at the number 13. There were 2 main performers in the halftime show. This hinted at the 2 Antichrist chiefs described in Revelation chapter 13. The main stars were Usher and Alicia Keys. However, prior to the show, only Usher was known to be performing. Prior to the show, Usher and his girlfriend, got a marriage license in Las Vegas. This sign in the Super Bowl, or I should say this sign in the Super Bowl, hints at the rapture and the marriage supper in the book of Matthew. His girlfriend's name is Jennifer, I don't know how to pronounce this, Goeco Achia. The meaning of the name Goeco Achia is upper house, which hints at the 120 disciples in the upper room on Pentecost, which means 50th day. The Chiefs equal 50, and the MVP, number 15, hints at the 15th triangular number, 120, as in the 120 disciples in the upper room. On Pentecost, 50th day, tongues of fire came down on the 120 disciples in the upper room. This is why fire from the sun will come down 50 days after the Chiefs, which hint at 50, won the Super Bowl. Also, Patrick Mahomes equals 152 in simple English gematria. Kamali Devi Harris equals 152 in simple English gematria. Jennifer Goeco-Achia equals 152 in simple English gematria. Alicia Keys, full name, Alicia Aguilera Cook, equals 152 in simple English gematria. All right. The MVP's number is 15, and the 15th prime number is 47. The date of the game on February 11th hints at 211, which is the 47th prime number. This is because Super Bowl 58 was 48 years, okay, which hints at the 48th president, after Super Bowl 10. All right? 10 is X in Roman numerals, okay? The Roman numeral for the number 10 is X. And in God's signs, X is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. All right? There's reasons for that, but anyway, that's the case. Now, so this Super Bowl was 48 years, Super Bowl 58 was 48 years after Super Bowl 10. Frankenheimer, as in Frankenstein, which is what happens when people take the thing because their chromosomes are changed, and it's leading to more problems that would be supernatural and unbelievable for people right now to believe. All right, so Frankenheimer was said to be, John Frankenheimer was said to be the last of the old school style of dictatorial directors, which hints at the Antichrist. And his movie, Black Sunday, takes place during a fictitious Super Bowl 10. The movie climaxes with the terrorists' failed attempt to explode their blimp over the Super Bowl stadium. The movie was released on April 1st, 1977, exactly 47 years before the predicted explosion high up on the sun, which will come down on Earth, which is hinted at with the blimp coming down from high in the sky and exploding in the movie. The date April 1st, 1977 hints at 47 years. 4 times 1 equals 4, and you got a 7. So if you have the eyes to see, you can see a 47. As does player number 15, the MVP, because the 15th prime number is 47. As does the 47th prime number, 211, which hints at the date on which player number 15 won the Super Bowl for the Chiefs and won the MVP, 48 years after Super Bowl 10, which hints at the 48th president. The name of the movie Black Sunday also hints at the coming blackout that will be induced by the coming solar flare eruption 50 days after the Chiefs won. And Chiefs symbolize 50 and fire, as has been explained. All right, so hopefully I explained that clearly enough. I'm running out a little bit of energy. I've been going on for more than an hour now. All right, but this is very, very astounding. I love this. This is finally known, because I knew before that God has been using the what's the name for a director's film list? Well, anyway, I've known that God has been using John Frankenheimer movies in his signs. This isn't the only one. There's Island of Dr. Moreau and 52 Pickup, so and more. Well, anyway, the MVP. So this is now known how the Super Bowl 10 fits into his God's big picture of signs. It's because it was released exactly 47 years before the fire from the sun up high, which is why the Chiefs, because they symbolize fire, and it will be 50 days after the Chiefs won. Okay? But it's 47 years after Super Bowl 10, or rather the movie about a fictitious Super Bowl 10. And the blimp coming down is symbolic of the explosion high up in the sky, the sun. So, you got that? And that's why we have these 47s in this Super Bowl. Because, again, the 15th prime number is 47, and the date itself is the 47th prime number. And I think there's another 47 that I'm forgetting, actually. Well, anyway, I think you got it, though. It's very clear, in my opinion, and it's really amazing. Also, yes, here's the other one. Also, the score added up to 47, which further confirms the addition of 47 years from Black Sunday on April 1st, 1977, which in itself hints at 47, to the date of the fire from the sun on April 1st, 2024. And by the way, there's a lot of other confirmations for this. I'm very confident that this is the date for the coming explosion on the sun. Oh, and by the way, we also have player number 87 of the Chiefs. Because again, it's described in Revelation 8:7. I think the 25 to 22 score hints at 2,520 days in Daniel chapter 9, Proverbs 25:2, which is, it is the glory of God to conceal a matter and the honor of kings to search a matter out, which is what people that attempt to analyze God's prophetic signs are doing. Anyway. Amazing. The shooting in Harris County began at 2:24 p.m., which hints at the date 211 plus 13 days equals the date 224, the date it is predicted that Harris will crash and the bomb in New York. The address of the church, that's why Harris County. The address of the church is 3700 Southwest Freeway. The 7 field goals kicked on this day, including by player number 7, Harrison Butker, who is known for being outspoken about his faith and for resisting the thing. Okay? Field goals are 3 points, making this a 3 sets of 7, because he's player number 7. Similar to 3700, hinting at 3 sets of 7. Joel Osteen is a heretic who preaches the Nicolaitan doctrine and preaches for money, lots of it, which Jesus forbid. That's why pastors commit grave sin. Pastors preaching for money. It is the root of the problem, and in fact is the root of the Nicolaitan doctrine, because the Nicolaitan doctrine wouldn't be institutionalized were it not for preaching for money and the monetization of the church. And that's exactly why Jesus forbid preaching for money, because it would lead to the Nicolaitan doctrine, which is exactly what has happened. There's reasons for that. Also, people love the Nicolaitan doctrine, right? It's easy, which is why they preach it. And that's why preachers very rarely preach the teachings of Jesus. They'll quote a lot and isolate passages of Paul, but very rarely will you hear the teachings of Jesus being preached in a church in which the preacher is preaching for money. It turns people off. It's all right. So anyway, Osteen was born 50 years and 8 days before Francis was elected Pope. San Francisco and Super Bowl 58 pointed to Francis. And on the day of Super Bowl 58, there was a shooting, which hints at the mark of the Antichrist, the SHOs, in Osteen's church. Osteen's church and most churches across America will soon join hands with Catholics at the Vatican and the Vatican, claiming that they worship the same God and that differences need to be overlooked, etc. The time of the shooting was changed to 1:53 p.m. The first report was of 2:24 p.m. is likely not a coincidence. I'm guessing God gave us 2:24 as a clue for us, and then 1:53 p.m. because 153 fish symbolize the church and the harvest of fishing for of fish at the end of the age of fishing for men. Actually, Harrison Butker is known for being a Catholic. He says he loves the traditional Latin Mass. The Super Bowl that pointed to the papacy on February 11th, 2024, which, by the way, was exactly 11 years after Benedict stepped down, which is another story. The 11th of the month, 11 years, but this was also exactly 95 years after the Lateran Treaty was signed, which recognized Vatican City as an independent state under the sovereignty of the Holy See. 95 years hints at the 95 Thesis, and this year was Martin Luther King Jr.'s 95th birthday. The Lateran Treaty was signed exactly 84 years before lightning struck St. Peter's Basilica at the Vatican, twice, by the way, 2 separate times, on the day that Pope Benedict the 16th, which hints at 4 times 4, not died, so that's a typo. There was the day that he stepped down. Okay, lightning struck the day that he stepped down, which then led to the Antichrist, Pope Francis. The second Antichrist who gets his power from the first is the 44th president. That's why Benedict the 16th. But 84 years, okay, I'm about to explain. The word Barak in Hebrew means lightning, and Obama equals 84 in Hebrew gematria. Obama was born on the date 84. That's why the 84 years. Also, 84 years is the orbit of Uranus, for which uranium was named. Uranium is used in nuclear weapons, and 13 days after Swift's 13th game is in which played number 13, Brock, which hints at Barack, Mr. Irrelevant, as in which hints at ex-president who served 2 terms and can't serve again, people thinking he's irrelevant, but he isn't. That's why he's nicknamed Mr. Irrelevant, because he was the last chosen in his draft and wasn't supposed to be a starting quarterback. And here he is a star quarterback leading his team to the Super Bowl. Is predicted to be the date of the dirty bomb with nuclear material, uranium, will explode in New York City. By the way, also, the 84 years of Uranus rotates on its side. And so for that, in that 84 years, 42 years of which are spent, any point on Uranus is in 42 years of sunlight followed by 42 years of darkness. And 42 years hints at the 42 months of the Antichrist in Bible prophecy, who was born on the date 84, hence the 84 years, all right? And whose name equals 84. Another hint at the 95 Thesis is that the shooting at the Nicolaitan Church in Houston before the Super Bowl began was, so the shooting happened right before the Super Bowl began, was 9 months and 5 days, which hints at 95, after the shooting in Dallas, which is used, the city Dallas is used in God's signs to hint at the Nicolaitan doctrine, because that's the location of the seminaries that churn out the pastors that preach for money and preach the Nicolaitan doctrine. The capital of evangelicalism, according to the mainstream media. All right, let's begin again. So the shooting hints at the 95 Thesis, okay? It was 95 years after the Lateran Treaty. But the shooting in Houston, Texas, before the Super Bowl began, was 9 months and 5 days, which hints at 95, after the shooting in Dallas, okay, at the outdoor mall before the Kentucky Derby began. In the Dallas shooting, 8 were killed and 7 injured. Pope Francis is 87 years old. Francis promoted The Thing. Travis Kelce promoted The Thing. His Viva Las Vegas pointed to Elvis's promotion of The Thing, and Travis wears number 87. Shots in shootings are symbolic of the SHOs and The Thing. The shooting in Dallas was on the date 5/6, and 56 is 8 times 7. The shooting in the Nicolaitan Church in Houston and the Super Bowl involving San Francisco was 8 times 7 days, or 56 days, after Francis turned 87 years old. 8 times 7 days is 56 days. 56 is 7 plus 7 times 7, which hints at 3 sets of 7. And the known Catholic kicker, Harrison Butker, known to be Catholic, the kicker Harrison Butler, was part of a 3 sets of 7, as he usually is in God's signs. On the day, or has been before, on the day of the Dallas shooting and the Kentucky Derby, King Charles was crowned. The shooting in Houston was on the day of the Super Bowl that pointed to the King Francis, who is 87. An 8th king, but belongs to the 7. And it goes to destruction, unquote. Okay, I'm quoting Bible prophecy. The reason why Francis is 87, and we have the 87 or the 8 times 7 days connection, etc., is because, quote, an 8th king, but it belongs to the 7, and it goes to destruction. Revelation 17:11. This is why Francis turned 87 years old 8 times 7 days before the Super Bowl that pointed to him. The number of days between the Dallas shooting that killed 8 and injured 7, which hints at 87, and the Houston shooting on the day of the Travis Kelce number 87 Thing sign is 281 days. G281 is verily true, amen, let it be so. This is also 77% of a year, and which hints at 7 times 7 equals 49 in the 49ers. MVP Mahomes passed for 333 yards and rushed for 66 yards, which hints at 3 sixes, 666. He rushed 9 times, which hints at 9 equals judgment. The Chiefs' 666 sign is 50 days to the fire on the sun. And number 15 is hints at the 47 years from the Black Sunday to the sun, which I already explained. All right. In the early AM, after Super Bowl 58, the National Weather Service issued a winter storm warning for New York City. 5 to 8 inches of snow, as in Super Bowl 58, were expected. This confirms the connection of 13 days to the predicted bomb in New York City. Again, 5 plus 8 equals 13. That's why the 5 to 8 inches of snow. Also, the tornado in Sullivan County was in Indiana. God has been using Indiana, and Indiana Jones signs to point to the vice president of Indian descent. The Sullivan County tornado that killed 3 people was on the same day as the roof collapsed due to high winds of the Apollo Theater in Chicago. This connection from this date to Travis Viva Las Vegas, Elvis, Ed Sullivan Theater thing is 317 days because G317 is the word for unwillingly, by way of compulsion, by force, and also because 3 times 17 equals 51, which hints at the 51st vice president, who is from Chicago, hence the Apollo Theater in Chicago, and will replace the vice president of Indian descent, hence the tornado in Indiana on the same day as the Chicago tornado, which connects to this Super Bowl with the 317 days, which also hints at the 51st vice president, who will enforce the mark of the Antichrist unwillingly by way of compulsion by force. Right? It's amazing. The tornado in Sullivan County followed Colbert mocking Trumpet in the Ed Sullivan Theater in Manhattan for his indictment. Trumpet's first indictment was followed 2 + 3 days, which is at 23 Obama, later by Trumpet's first arrest and arraignment in Manhattan on the date 4/4, April 4th, which hints at the 44th president. This was on the exact 50th anniversary. All right, 50 states in America, the completion of America because of Leviticus 25 and the 50 years regarding things going back to their original way. And it was the 50th anniversary, extremely prophetic, in other words, of the official opening of the Twin Towers World Trade Center in Manhattan on the date 4/4 in 1973. By the way, I just realized the 73 hints at 3 sets of 7, and the 3 sets of 7 in the book of Joshua were enacted before the walls collapsed and the towers collapsed. Anyway, Trump famously called into Channel 9 News on 9/11 when the Twin Towers collapsed in God's judgment. Trumpet's indictment and arraignment on the 50th anniversary of the Twin Towers in Manhattan made Trumpet's indictment in Manhattan symbolic of God's indictment of America. The Israelites enacted a symbolic 3 sets of 7 and blew trumpets before the walls of security of Jericho collapsed in God's judgment. Trumpet's indictment and arraignment, which was a big trumpet indictment for America, was also on the 73rd anniversary of the UN Trustee Council's official recommendation that Jerusalem be made an international city. 73 years since at 3 sets of 7. And the U.S. President and Antichrist will make Jerusalem an international city. The 44th president, hence why these 4/4 dates. And the decision to make Jerusalem an international city on the date 4/4 in 1950, the UN Trustee Council's recommendation, was exactly 23, as in Obama, number 23, years before the official opening of the World Trade Center towers that looked like a giant 11. Tower of Babel, Genesis chapter 11. Okay. Yeah, you got that right? And that's a pairing of 23 and 44, because the date 4/4 in 1950 and the date 4/4 in 1973 connect with 23 years. That's a pairing of 23/4 that identifies the 44th president who wore jersey number 23 in high school. All right, and yeah. The reason why Trump famously called into Channel 9 News is the number 9 symbolizes God's judgment, and Trump trumpeted with his call on 9/11 to Channel 9 News. There's more to that, but it's in other videos. I forgot to make clear that Colbert's standing ovation in the Ed Sullivan Theater for his mocking of Trumpet's indictment was a national news story. This is because it occurred 3 minutes after the news broke. So the news was like, Colbert gets a standing ovation right when, the news was announced. So anyway. Also, Colbert was known for heavily promoting The Thing. Right. He was paid a lot by this company here that begins with a PF and ends with a Zer, an Iser. He was paid a lot for this. Hence the connection from Colbert and his indictment, mocking the indictment, with the 317 days, which hints at G 317, which means unwillingly, by compulsion, by force. Hence the connection also, furthermore, between Colbert and the Ed Sullivan Theater and the tornado in Sullivan County that connects to Elvis and his promoting of the Thing in the Ed Sullivan Theater. So in other words, this is the big picture. Colbert promoted the Thing in the Ed Sullivan Theater, where Elvis first promoted the Thing in the Ed Sullivan Theater, and Travis hints at Elvis, and Travis said Viva Las Vegas twice on stage 317 days after Colbert was on stage, who had promoted the Thing, and Travis promoted the Thing in the commercials this year. And yeah, it's all amazing how it all connects together. It's all part of the same sign. And Elvis promoted the Thing in the Ed Sullivan Theater, which is why Colbert is known for promoting the Thing in the historic Ed Sullivan Theater. It was 281 days before the Dallas Nicolaitan Doctrine Evangelical Church shooting and the Houston megachurch shooting on the day of the Super Bowl. G 281 is verily, truly, amen. Let it be so. There was a prophetic doink in the game with 5 minutes and 46 seconds remaining in the game. G 546 is omna, which hints at Obama. Omna means verily, truly, indeed. The ball, so that's the Hebrew word and that's the Greek word, okay? So we've got both of them, the same meaning in this sign here. The ball in the doink hit the goalpost, which is a doink, and the kickoff return kicked by Harrison Butker. On the kickoff return kicked by Harrison Butker, who is the prophetic kicker that God has been using for years now in his signs, after a field goal kicked by Harrison Butker. So Harrison Butker kicked the field goal, then kicked the kickoff return, which hits the goalpost, making it a doink, making it a prophetic sign. The goalposts, by the way, symbolize the towers on 9/11 too, the upright goalposts. And the planes and doinks symbolize the planes that crashed into them. All right. The field goal that Harrison Butker kicked right before the doink tied the game at 16-16, which hints at 4 times 4 to 4 times 4. And the 44th president, Obama, as in Omna. In other words, God communicated, verily, truly, indeed, Omna, Obama, the 44th president, will have a double doink presidency. Because this doink hints at the prophetic double doinks, as I'm about to explain, and they were signs that point to the double doink presidency of Barack Obama. This doink in the Super Bowl that pointed... Okay, this doink in the Super Bowl was... Okay, so the Super Bowl pointed to the 216th Pope, and this doink in the Super Bowl was exactly 266. Okay, I didn't say that right again. This Super Bowl pointed to the 266th Pope, and this doink in this Super Bowl was exactly 266 weeks after the prophetic double doink with 9 seconds remaining in the playoff game in Chicago, which symbolizes Obama, which in turn was exactly 50 weeks prior to Harrison Butker for the Chiefs, who equal 50. That's one of the 50 weeks. Prophetic double doink in Chicago with the score at 23. The 9 seconds and the score at 23 in these two double doinks is a pairing of 9 and 23 that hinted Obama and confirms the signs and connections. Okay, and the Chiefs symbolize the church because of the 50 and the fire on Pentecost and all that, 50th day, 50 years between their first Super Bowl win and their second. Okay, so this is a judgment for the church. Sign, which is the main theme of God's big picture of signs, patterns, and connections, which is only being explained on this channel. And one reason being is that that's the case. this channel is not afraid to say that God is very, very displeased with the American Evangelical Church, unlike other channels. And that's one big reason why God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections is only being explained on this channel. The double doink in Chicago was made by the kicker for Chicago. And that's the whole reason for the end times, by the way. That's the reason for the judgment right now. The church is supposed to be the light, and the reason why the land is so dark is because of the church. At least that's what's communicated. I mean, there are other reasons, but that's essentially what is going on. America's light is out because the church's light is out. The double doink in Chicago was made by the kicker for Chicago. Okay, both of these double doinks were kicked in Chicago. But the one that I'm talking about, the first of the two, because the Harrison Butker one was exactly 50 weeks later, because the Chiefs equal 50. And also, Pentecost is known as the Feast of Weeks. Oh, and by the way, yes, this is important actually. Hence why 50 weeks. So 50, Pentecost literally means 50, and Pentecost is also known as the Feast of Weeks. Hence why 50 weeks connections are extremely prophetic in God's science. But 50 weeks is also 350 days. And that's because it hints at the 350th word in Strong's Greek New Testament Concordance, which is the word that means examine or judge, to investigate, examine, inquire into, scrutinize, sift, question, specifically in a forensic sense of a judge to hold an investigation, to interrogate, examine the accused or witnesses, to judge of, estimate, determine the excellence or defects of any person or thing, as in the American Evangelical Church. All right, so again, we have these two prophetic double doinks in Chicago, which hint at the double doink presidency of the president who is from Chicago. They are exactly 50 weeks apart, and the Chiefs symbolize the church. So does 50 weeks. This is judgment for the church, the second presidency of Obama, which is the primary purpose of the end times. Test the faith of quote-unquote Christians. That's the purpose. Now, this Super Bowl that just happened was exactly 266 weeks after the first of the two double doinks, and this Super Bowl that just happened points to the 266th Pope. All right, now this first double doink that in Chicago, which was in a playoff game, was kicked by the kicker for Chicago. And it was exactly 4 + 4 weeks, which since it's the 44th president from Chicago, earlier that season, when the same kicker for Chicago, player number 1, hit the goalpost upright 4 times on the date 11/11, which hints at 4 ones. It was the 100th anniversary of World War I, in historic Soldier Field, which was named after the soldiers who fought in World War I. Right? Player number 1, 100th anniversary of World War I on the date 1/11. 4 goalposts for player number 1. Okay? The first 3 of the 4 doinks were kicked with 11 minutes remaining in each of the first 3 quarters. The last of the 4 doinks hit the post with 8 minutes and 46 remaining in the 4th quarter. Because the Twin Towers, which are hinted at with the upright goalposts that looked like a giant 11, were hit on 9/11 at 8:46 a.m. Now, what I'm going to do is play a clip of this so that you can see this. This is astounding. You can well, first of all, the ultimate evangelical tool is this prediction. But you can also show someone, how this kicker kicked the goalpost 4 times in one game. That's unheard of if you don't know football. Hitting the upright goalpost is extremely rare. But to hit it 4 times, each with 11 minutes remaining in the quarter, with the 4th one being 8:46 remaining in the quarter, which hints at 9/11, and Twin Towers, it looked like a giant 11. And that same kicker kicking the prophetic double doink 4 + 4 weeks later which is why Al Michaels, a sports announcer, couldn't believe it. And this was when the term double doink was coined in that game. Oh, Al Michaels said that's impossible because it was the same kicker. And no one could believe it. In the video, the coach's mouth is wide open, dropped, like he couldn't believe it either, because they lost the game because it was 9 seconds remaining in the game. They lost the game because of that. Well, anyway, yeah. So I'm going to play a clip right now, and you can see what I'm talking about. Oh, and by the way, that was the same day as the mysterious seismic waves. The scientists couldn't even figure out what it was because it wasn't an earthquake. It didn't have its characteristic P waves, etc. And anyway, the waves traveled around 11,000 miles around the world. It was a National Geographic story and stuff like that. And the reason why the mysterious seismic waves traveled 11,000 miles around the world is because it was on the 100th anniversary of World War I. For which in the ceremony in France, the leaders were late, which was a sign in itself that hinted no peace. On November 11th, 2018, in Soldier Field in Chicago, Chicago Bears kicker player number 1, in 4 field goal attempts, hit the upright goalpost 4 times in one game. The date that player 1 hit the upright goalpost 4 times was 11/11, which is 4 ones. 11/11 in 2018 was the 100th anniversary of World War I that ended on the 11th day of the 11th month at 11 a.m. This kicker hit the upright goalpost 4 times in one game in Soldier Field, a historic field that is named after the soldiers that fought in World War I. On this date, 11/11, 2018, scientists were baffled by mysterious seismic waves that traveled 11,000 miles around the world on the 100th anniversary of World War I. For those that don't know football, hitting the upright goalpost is exceedingly rare. He hit the upright goalpost 4 times in one game, and the first kick that hit the upright goalpost was with 11 minutes remaining in the first quarter of the game. The second kick that hit the upright goalpost hit the upright goalpost with 11 minutes remaining in the second quarter. The third kick that hit the upright goalpost hit the upright goalpost with 11 minutes remaining in the third quarter. After this kick, the play clock was stopped at exactly 11 minutes and 9 seconds remaining. The fourth kick that hit the upright goalpost exactly as the play clock ticked 8 minutes and 46 seconds remaining in the third quarter. On 9/11 at 8:46 a.m., Flight 11, with a crew of 11 people, the second plane had a crew of 9 people, hit the Twin Towers that looked like a giant 11 in New York State, the 11th state to join the Union. Also, the upright field goal post looks like a giant 11. Jesus coined the phrase the 11th hour, which referred to the last hour of daylight before darkness, and in English is an idiom that means last chance. Time is running out, as in last chance to repent and get right with God before time runs out. This doink in the Super Bowl makes 4 prophetic doinks for Harrison Butker. Prior to the doink in the Super Bowl, Harrison Butker, number 7, had kicked 3 prophetic doinks, making it a 3 sets of 7. The most recent of the 3 doinks was against Denver. Denver is the highest city in America. Bama is the Hebrew word that means high place, which is why Obama's Democratic nomination acceptance speech was in Mile High Stadium in Denver, the highest city in America. Doinks, balls that hit the goalpost uprights, are made at a high place. H226 is the word in the concordance that means prophetic sign. This doink against Denver was made 2 years, 2 months, and 6 days before the doink in the Super Bowl. Harrison Butker's doinks in a high place hint at the doink turbulence bird strike on Harris's plane in a high place, and her plane will crash from a high place, which will lead to the rise of the 44th president from Chicago in his double doink presidency. The Chiefs, which symbolize 50, the Chiefs' Harrison Butker kicked a prophetic double doink in Chicago on December 22nd, 2019, with a score at 23. Obama, Chicago, number 23. Chicago equals 276 in gematria, and 276 is the 23rd triangular number. Okay. This, again, was exactly 50 weeks after the double doink playoff game in Chicago, which gave Nick, as in Nicolaitan, Foles, player number 9, as in judgment on the church for its Nicolaitan doctrine. Nick played for Philadelphia, which God uses in his signs as contrast with the church of Laodicea, which is the American Evangelical Church. It gave the Philadelphia Eagles and Nick Nicolaitan Foles the win in the playoff game. This double doink was in turn exactly 266 weeks before Harrison's doink in the Super Bowl that pointed to the 266th Pope. Harrison Butker's first prophetic doink, which was his double doink in Chicago in 2019, was exactly 6 times 6 times 6 weeks before his doink in the Super Bowl. Wow. This 50 weeks connection and 6 times 6 times 6 weeks connection from the Chiefs' double doink in Chicago to the San Francisco Super Bowl hints at the two Chiefs antichrists, the president from Chicago and Francis, who will persecute the church, symbolized by 50 and the Chiefs. Right? There's dual symbolism in the Chiefs. If you didn't pick that up yet, God can overlap. He can do what he wants. He can overlap symbolism. Although the Chiefs hint at the two antichrists, they also hint at the church for the reasons that I've explained. Fire, 50, etc. Harrison Butker's other double doink was against the Panthers. Okay, this was the fourth of the one that I haven't described yet. And Panthers are big cats, which hints at the big cat with 4 heads and 4 wings, described in Daniel chapter 7, which hints at the 44th president, because it's in context of a description of the Antichrist in Daniel chapter 7. And at the time, the score of the double doink against the Panthers, the score added up to 44, which is confirming of what I just said. Making his 2 double doinks, because two of the 4 doinks were single doinks, and 2 of the 4 doinks were double doinks. Okay, this one with the Panthers, making his 2 double doinks a pairing of 23. Because the first one was kicked with 23 in the game in Chicago, and Chicago hints at 23. Michael Jordan, for example, wore number 23 in Chicago, and Obama, etc., and 44. Okay, so it's a pairing of 23 and 44, which confirms the signs and connections. This double doink, the one in the Panthers one, was on the day that the host of Jeopardy died. Jeopardy is known for its trademark double jeopardy, which is hinted at with the double doink, which both of them point to the double presidency for the 44th president. Hence the big cats, which hints at the 4 heads and 4 wings, 44. Okay, so the double jeopardy sign and the double doink sign on the same day, making it a sign that America is in jeopardy with a double doink presidency of the 44th president. Alex Trebek died at the age of 80 after he had hosted 8,000 episodes of Jeopardy. He infamously hosted a controversial gubernatorial debate in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania, the capital, as in Kamala Harris and Harrison Butker. And on the day he died, which was the day of the Harrison-Butker double doink, hence Harrisonburg or Harrisburg, on the day that he died, at the age of 80, after hosting 8,000 episodes, the Pittsburgh Steelers in Pennsylvania, hence the gubernatorial debate in Pennsylvania, went to a record 8-0. Now, the reason why his gubernatorial debate was controversial, well, no, I'm not going to get into that. That's explained in the Jeopardy Prophecy video. It's an amazing video. Make sure you watch that video. All right. Now, as I just said, Alex Trebek is connected to Pennsylvania. He died at the age of 80 after hosting 8,000 episodes. And on the day he died, the Pittsburgh Steelers of Pennsylvania went to a record of 8-0. On 9/11, Flight 93 crashed into a field 80 miles outside of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, killing 44 people. This is why, which is the 44th president, this is why this double doink on the day of the death of the host of Jeopardy is exactly 1,190, which hints at 9/11, days before Harrison Butker's doink in the Super Bowl. This 1,190 days is also exactly 170 weeks, and this hints at the number 17 and the 17 minutes in between when the two planes struck the two towers on 9/11. 1,190 days is 700 plus 70 times 7, which is a symbolic 3 sets of 7. And on 9/11, 7 times 7 times 7 firefighters died. This 1,190 days connection is also 3 years, 3 months, and 3 days, and the Chiefs won their third Super Bowl by 3 points with 3 seconds remaining in the game on the quarterback's 333 passing yards, etc., as mentioned earlier, which hints at the third term and double presidency of Obama, the 44th president, high place, which is where doinks are made, and where the planes hit the towers on 9/11, a high place, and the 44 deaths in the plane that crashed from a high place 80 miles outside of Pittsburgh. Barack Obama first entered politics at the age of 34, and he grew up in Indonesia, which has 34 provinces. He was elected as state senator representing the 13th District of Illinois. On October 24th, 2020, on 4th down, as time expired in the game, a quadruple doink was kicked in college football. By the Rice University Owls, with the score tied at 34-34. The quadruple doink was kicked in Rice Stadium, which hosted the 8th Super Bowl in 1974. 8th hints at 4 plus 4 and the 44th president. And 1974 was the year that the 44th president turned 13 years old. Rice Stadium is in Houston, Texas, which is Harris County. Harris is predicted to die after a doink of her airplane in a high place. Her plane crash is predicted to be exactly 3 years and 34 months, which hints at 34, after the quadruple doink, with the game tied at 34-34 as time expired. This 3 years and 4 months is also 333% of a year, and her crash will be 13 days after Swift flew in her airplane to attend her 13th Chiefs game in Super Bowl 58, which is at 5 plus 8 equals 13, in which the Chiefs won by 3 points with 3 seconds remaining because of the quarterback's 333 passing yards, etc., which confirms the 333% of a year connection. This game was 330% of a year after the quadruple doink. More precisely, it is 330.14, 14% of a year, which hints at Isaiah chapter 31 verse 4, which is what Harris's predicted crash in the city with the area code 314 will point to. Because Isaiah chapter 31:4 is the lion that comes down roaring like a lion, and this is symbolic of turbulence, or rather turbulence is symbolic of a lion's roar, which is predicted to be the initial cause that will bring down Harris's airplane. And St. Louis, where she is predicted to crash, is the area code 314. Hence the 330.14% of a year connection to her predicted crash from the quadruple doink. That's astounding. The Rice football team is named Owls. Barack Obama was known for being a night owl president. I think what I'll do is I'll play a clip of the double doink or the quadruple doink. The Rice football team is named Owls. Barack Obama was known for being a night owl president, in stark contrast with his predecessor, who was known for being an early bird president. The first instance of the word owl in the Bible is Leviticus 11:17. The 1117th word in the Hebrew concordance is Bama, which means high place. The Antichrist is described in Zechariah 11:17, which also hints at H1117 Bama. Rice hints at food that will be rationed by Obama and Francis, the chiefs, to those who take the mark of the Antichrist that is described in Revelation chapter 13. At the time of the Super Bowl 58, which hints at 5 plus 8 equals 13, that pointed to Obama and Francis, the video of the quadruple doink had just over 666,000 views. Right? All this, the doink in the Super Bowl was what we're talking about here, right? Harrison Butker's doink brought us into the subject of doinks, which led to the real discovery that the quadruple doink at the time of the Super Bowl on YouTube has 666,000 views. 666 is the number of the Antichrist described in Revelation chapter 13. And the owls hint at Barack Obama, who is the Antichrist. It's amazing. Rice Stadium, where this quadruple doink was kicked, is where John F. Kennedy delivered his famous "We choose to go to the moon" speech. The 49th vice president was born exactly 4 years and 9 months, which hints at 49, before Apollo 11 landed on the moon. The quadruple doink hit the two upright goalposts that resemble the number 11, as in Apollo 11. The moon is a giant rock, and in the Bible, rock is symbolic of Christ. America's last departure from the moon symbolized America's departure from Christ. And it was exactly 48 years, which is the 48th president, before the first American took the thing of the Antichrist, the mark of the Antichrist, which is the thing. Okay? So, John F. Kennedy delivered his America's last departure from the moon was exactly 48 years before Thing Day, the day that the first American took the thing, which was the day of a 4.4 earthquake, 4 times 4 miles deep, located at Hawaii's highest mountain, high place, Obama, 44th president. Okay, goalpost uprights. The last departure from the moon was exactly 144 weeks after abortions were first legalized in Hawaii. Okay, so you got Hawaii to Hawaii there, in other words, to confirm this. The 50th state, I might add, which makes a judgment for the church as well. Harris, it makes a judgment for America, I should say, the American church. Harris is a known advocate for abortion rights. And she visited Kennedy Space Center to see the launch of Artemis, which is named after the goddess of chastity and childbirth, which isn't an accident. And by the way, Trump trumpeted a return to the moon by 2024. Trump is God's trumpet. He first trumpeted this on May 14th. No, I'm not going to go off on a tangent, but bottom line, he trumpeted a return to the moon, and the moon symbolizes Christ. The sun symbolizes God the Father, and the sun's light is too bright for us to gaze at, but we can gaze at the sun's light reflected off of the moon. Hence why watching the moon in the Bible is important and is symbolism for watching the signs of the Lord's return. And, okay, so Trump trumpeted a return to the moon by 2024 because it was a prophetic sign that communicated that the return of Christ would be in 2024. And so Artemis is the result of this trumpeting of returning to the moon in 2024. Now, the Lord is returning because of abortions. And of course, many other things. And Kamala Harris is the biggest advocate, you could say, of abortion rights. And that's why she attended the prophetic attempt to launch Artemis. And Artemis is named after the goddess of childbirth. Anyway, the last departure from the moon is symbolic of America's departure from Christ, which is why it was exactly 144 weeks, a prophetic book of Revelation number, after the first legalization of abortions. All right, let's continue now. President Kennedy died while serving in the White House while in a moving vehicle. Artemis is a vehicle too. Likewise, Vice President Harris will die while serving in the White House while in a moving vehicle. That's the other connection here between Kennedy and Kamala Harris, which is why she connects to the moon with 4 years and 9 months, and Kennedy said we should go to the moon, and that's the reason for this Rice Stadium sign with the quadruple doink where Kennedy delivered this speech. In other words, through this quadruple doink, he's not only pointing to the double doink presidency of the 44th president, but it's in Harris County. It's pointing to how will that come about through the death of Kamala Harris. But also it's pointing to Rice because of food being rationed by the Antichrist. But he's also pointing to abortions because of the last departure from the moon, symbolic of the America's departure from Christ, which is why it was 144 weeks after abortions were legalized in Hawaii, where Obama is from. The reason why the one person shot in the church shooting in Harris County on the day of the Super Bowl is 57 years old, and why Harrison Butker, a known Christian, kicked a Super Bowl record 57-yard field goal, is because the I-57 highway connects Chicago to Cairo, Illinois. The location of Harris's death will point to this, because Cairo, Illinois is in Little Egypt, which is where the two eclipses will cross each other. The upcoming one will cross the path of the first one over Cairo, Illinois. It will engender an X, which is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist. Furthermore, that day I just mentioned, when the first person took the thing, and the 4.4 earthquake, 4 times 4 miles deep in Hawaii, the highest place, that day is the midpoint of the two eclipses, the Thing Day, and the Thing is the mark of the Antichrist, and an X is what will be engendered with the two eclipses, and X's are all about their midpoint. In other words, the two eclipses that engender an X identify the Thing as the mark of the Antichrist, because X's are about their midpoint, and the midpoint date, December 14th, 2020, is the day of the first Thing. And in the Bible, Egypt is symbolism for the Antichrist and the Antichrist system. And anyway, Kamala Harris will die in St. Louis because it will point to this area of the country. And furthermore, her path across the country in a flight from Washington, D.C. to Los Angeles will hint at the path of the eclipse across the country. And the eclipse, the first one, peaked over St. Louis at 1:17 p.m., which since that's Jesus, who was resurrected on the 17th day of the first month in the Hebrew calendar. Okay, the shooting at the church in Harris County was in the church of the famous preacher Joel Osteen. Joel Osteen was born on the date 3/5, March 5th. The 35th president, which is what is hinted at with 3/5, was the first Catholic president, and he was shot outdoors in Dallas, Texas, which is, well, okay, I'm getting to it. We already talked about this, how the Harris County shooting at the church connects to the Dallas, Texas shooting. Okay, so let's rewind here. Joel Osteen was born on the date 3/5, and the 35th president was the first Catholic president who was shot outdoors in Dallas, Texas, as his motorcade was entering the I-35 highway. The shooting in Harris County connected with the outdoor shooting in Dallas, Texas. Osteen was born 22,258 days before the shooting at his church on the day of the Super Bowl that ended with a score of 22-25, and it was Super Bowl 58, which is what 22,258 days hints at. That's amazing. The Super Bowl pointed to Catholicism and Pope Francis. The day of the shooting at the Texas church of Osteen's, who was born on 3/5, which hints at the 35th president shot in Texas, on the day of the Super Bowl, pointed to Catholicism and the Pope, was exactly 95 years after the Lateran Treaty regarding the Vatican City. This day was also 95 days after the Vatican published a document that gave permission to baptize trans people and allow them to be godparents. The shooter in Osteen's church was a trans person. The shooting was also 3 weeks and 6 days, which hints at 666, after the 95th birthday of Martin Luther King Jr., who was shot. The 95th anniversary of the Lateran Treaty and the shooting of Osteen's was also 9 months and 5 days after the shooting in Dallas. Kennedy died while in office in Dallas, and Harris will die while in office. Thus, the connection between the shooting in Harris County and the shooting in Dallas. 3 days after the Chiefs won their third Super Bowl by 3 points, was actually it was their third modern Super Bowl. In other words, the third for the coach and the quarterback and Travis Kelce. So 3 days after the Chiefs won their third Super Bowl by 3 points with 3 seconds remaining in the third half, which is what overtime is, with Mahomes' 333 passing yards, there was a mass shooting at the Victory Celebration Parade. This shooting was also 3 days after the shooting in Harris County at the megachurch. 22 people were shot at the KC Victory Parade. The number 22 equals the mark of the Antichrist, because the inverse of the mark of the Antichrist would have been the Tav mark in the Old Testament, in Ezekiel chapter 9. And the Tav letter is the last letter and the 22nd letter in the Hebrew alphabet. The mark of the Antichrist is described in the last book of the Bible, the 22nd out of 22 books in the Bible that have a total of 22 chapters. Okay, so that's why there were 22 people shot, because the shots are symbolic of the thing, the mark of the Antichrist. And that's why this is involving the church, because the primary purpose of God's creation is the church, and the mark of the Antichrist is used to test the faith of the quote-unquote Christians. Okay, so the number 22 equals the mark of the Antichrist. Mass shootings are symbolic of the SHOs and the mark of the Antichrist. It was the 48th mass shooting in the US this year. The Antichrist will be the 48th president. Obama equals 84 in gematria and was born on the date 8/4. KC equals 84 in gematria. The chiefs hint at the commander-in-chief and the leader of the nation. The team's logo is a tip of a spear, which points to the tip of the thing, you know what I'm talking about, that goes into people, which is the mark of the Antichrist, which the 48th president will enforce. The shooting was in the 24th state, Missouri. The Antichrist will come to power after the predicted death of Harris in a plane crash in the 24th state, on the 24th of the month, in 24, as in 2024, 240 hours, which I forget how many days that is, 10 days, after the shooting in the 24th state. Her crash will be on the 38th parallel. Like the 38th president, the 48th president and Antichrist will not be elected president or vice president. The KC shooting was exactly 38 months after the first person in America took the mark of the Antichrist. And we already explained how that connected. Okay, this date was the midpoint of the two great American eclipses. The next one being on the date 4/8, April 8th, which hints at the 48th president. The paths of these two eclipses over America will cross over each other and engender an X over America. What makes an X are the lines that cross each other at their midpoint. An X is symbolic of the mark of the Antichrist, which points to the midpoint date as we explained earlier, which was the day of the first thing. Harris's predicted crash will be near where the paths of the eclipses will cross each other, and this crash will point to the mark of the Antichrist. Obama's number is 23. The KC shooting was exactly 2 times 3, as in 23 years, after the mass school shooting at the Marjory Stoneman Douglas School, in which the shooter killed 17 and injured 17. This in turn was exactly 144,000 hours after 2 planes struck 2 towers on 9/11, 17 minutes apart. Hence the 17 injured and 17 killed. The winning touchdown for KC was made by player number 17. Okay, so 9/11 connects with an extremely prophetic 144,000 hours because of the 144,000 in the book of Revelation to the extremely prophetic mass school shooting, and mass school shootings are not only symbolic of the mark of the thing, the things that go into people, but also they are judgment for abortions. That's the reason for mass school shootings. And in that school shooting, there were 17 injured and 17 killed, and that's hinting at the 2 planes, 2 towers, 17 minutes apart. And that in turn is exactly 2 times 3 years before the KC shooting. And Obama's number is 23. The KC shooting was right near, and by the way, the KC shooting in itself is symbolic of the church because it's a celebration, and Kansas City Chiefs is symbolic of the church, as I've explained, and the rapture will be a celebration, but in this context, this particular sign is a judgment of those who will not make the rapture, that will include quote-unquote Christians. The KC shooting was right near Union Rail Station. KC is located near where the millions of buffalo were shot and brought by railroad to be processed. Okay, that's the history of Kansas City, and just west of Kansas City in eastern Kansas. Okay, the Great Plains buffalo slaughtered by the millions were brought to along the railroad to essentially Kansas City. You know, that's the history of the region. By 1900, there were 500 buffalo left in Yellowstone National Park. Today, there are 5,000 in Yellowstone and 500,000 buffalo in the U.S. The mark of the Antichrist things, SHOs, have slaughtered millions of people, which is the reason for the prophetic sign involving the slaughter of millions of buffalo and this connection to the mass shooting, as again, mass shootings are symbolic of the thing. The last great herd of buffalo are in Yellowstone, and Yellowstone is predicted to erupt on Pentecost, which means 50. And so do the Chiefs, symbolize 50. Which will be 14 weeks and 4 days, which hits at 144, after the mass shooting near where the shot and slaughtered buffalo were brought, Kansas City, which was exactly 38 months and 144,000 hours after 9/11. No, sorry. 2 times 3 years. Okay. When about 3,000 people were slaughtered. Okay, so about 3,000 were slaughtered on 9/11. And that's relevant because after their rebellion at Mount Sinai, it was about 3,000, quote unquote, that perished for their rebellion. And America has rebelled, and that's why it was about 3,000. It was actually 2,996. It was definitely for the purpose of pointing to the book of Exodus and the about, quote unquote, 3,000, or the quote, about 3,000, unquote. Okay, this is why KC Chiefs won their 3rd Super Bowl by 3 points with 3 seconds remaining with 333 passing yards. All right, now, but also the 5,000 and 500,000 buffalo and 500 buffalo that I mentioned here, that also is a confirmation of the Chiefs, which symbolize 50, and also the eruption of Yellowstone. And furthermore, the Kansas City Chiefs are a Western team, and they arguably, and from what I have seen in God's signs, point to Yellowstone. The two teams that in a way represent the western part of the country are the Kansas City Chiefs and Denver Broncos. Okay? Those are the two closest cities, and the land mass area in which you could say is Chiefs or Broncos fans' territory is quite large. And anyway, it includes Yellowstone. The Super Bowl pointed to Pope Francis, and this 6 years connection between the Super Bowl victory parade and the mass shooting in Florida is also 313 weeks. And Francis was elected Pope on the date 313. 3 divided by 13 equals 0.230. And this connection is also 2 times 3 years, which ends at 23. Obama wore jersey number 23. The KC shooting was the 48th mass shooting of the year, which hints at the 48th president. The Florida shooting killed 17 and injured 17, and connected with the 17 minutes on 9/11, and it was player number 17 that caught the winning touchdown in the Super Bowl. His name, Mecole Hardman, was born 310 months and 30 days, which hints at 313, before the Super Bowl. Hardman hints at the school Marjory Stoneman Douglas. Stoneman, right? KC's nickname is Heart of America. The KC shooting on Valentine's Day, which is symbolized by hearts, Hardman and Stoneman hint at the hearts of the unrepentant in America. Hardman was born 15 years and 1 day before Francis was elected Pope. 151 equals Jesus in Gematria, and 151 is the 36th prime number, and as explained earlier, 36 hints at 666, the number of the Antichrist. The KC shooting was 156 days after 9/11 in 2023. 9/11 is the 156th prime number. On 9/11, the organization that's responsible for approving the things, you know what I'm talking about, it begins with an F and ends with an A, okay? Promoting on 9/11 in 2023, the FA organization approved the CVD disease, the boost, okay? And okay, so on the same day was the New York Jets Aaron Rodgers Achilles heel prophetic sign, okay? Which is explained in the Aaron Rodgers video. It's an amazing video. Make sure you watch it. By the way, when this prediction comes to pass, you should know that you need to watch every minute of every video. In the KC Super Bowl, Chiefs player number 57 had an Achilles heel injury, and his Chiefs teammate kicked a Super Bowl record 57-yard field goal. This was the day that a 57-year-old was shot in the leg at the Harris County megachurch shooting. He was the only one shot, except for the shooter. Thing in Gematria equals 57. The Chiefs, number 17, caught the winning touchdown, and he was traded from the New York Jets. Aaron Rodgers, okay, 9/11, in other words, exactly 17 weeks, which is 119 days, which hints at 9/11, before the Chiefs' victory parade. The KC, which is 84 in English Gematria, was 17 times 7 weeks. 17 times 7 weeks after the details of Biden's SHOs. Man ends with a date, the word that begins with the man and ends with a date, for 84 million workers. KC is 13 in Hebrew Gematria, and the former New York Jets caught the winning touchdown for KC in the 13th game Swift attended on the day of the shooting in Harris County, 13 days before Harris's jet is predicted to crash. On the same day, it is predicted that the bomb in New York will explode, hence the New York Jets. The former New York Jet is 25 years old, and after Harris's death in a jet, the 25th Amendment will be used to make Obama, 84, the 48th president, 48th mass shooting. There's a lot going on in here. I don't know if you got it, and I don't want to really repeat it again. You can read this paragraph. It's amazing. Let me take a stab at it. Yeah. So it ties back to Aaron Rodgers on 9/11 and the sign, which was a 9/11 sign, by the way. And it was jets in New York that crashed into the Twin Towers, incidentally, and that's why the New York Jets, why Aaron Rodgers got his Achilles heel injury in the first drive of the first game of the season, the highly anticipated debut of Aaron Rodgers as a Jet. All right, there's way more to that. But this player that caught the winning touchdown also played for the New York Jets and played with Aaron Rodgers on that date. He was traded 17 weeks, which hints at 9/11 because of the 17 minutes. And 17 weeks is also 119 days, which also hints at 9/11 before the Chiefs' mass shooting All right. And in the Chiefs Super Bowl, there was the Achilles heel injury of player number 57. And, 57, I think you got it. I think I said it all. I'm just repeating myself. So let's move on. God signs there's just so much. This video is so long now, and this is just the Super Bowl. But what can I do? Because, I'm just the relayer of the information. And I'm not even going to apologize for the video being so long because it's all God's doing. I'm just repeating all of the information. And I don't think you can, in my opinion, disagree with any of the information that I have been giving isn't relevant and prophetic. It's all relevant and all prophetic, and therefore all of the information needs to get into the video. KC equals 13. Andy Reid is the chief coach of the Chiefs. Reid equals 6 times 6 times 6 in English gematria. Andy Reid equals 480 in English gematria. Okay, which is the 48th president, the chief. He won his first of 3 Super Bowls in his 222nd win of his career, which hints at the mark, with the sting play, the famous play of the game, which is from the 22-yard line, a pass from the 22-yard line to the 22-yard line, which hints at the sting of the thing. The stingers in Revelation are symbolic of the thing that is used to put the thing in people. All right. And the number 22 symbolizes the mark, as I explained earlier. All right. So this chief coach, a coach in itself is symbolic of a chief, and he's the chief of the Chiefs. And he apparently had a role in calming down the crowd or something at the Chiefs victory parade at the 48th mass shooting of the year, which is the 48th president, the chief. Okay. And his name equals 666. And it equals 48. All right, it was clearly Andy Reid is identifying the Antichrist who will enforce the mark of the Antichrist. And anyway, so what I'm saying is that he won his first of the 3 Super Bowls on his 222nd win, okay, with this famous play in the game, which was a mark of the Antichrist sign, because it was a pass from the 22-yard line to the other 22-yard line, and it was on the date 2/2 in 2020. Okay, and the Chiefs, which sent at 13, because I just said KC equals 13 in gematria. And also it was Swift's 13th game, if you recall. Okay, and Reid's 3rd Super Bowl win hints at 313 in 13. The date 313, the date the Pope was elected, the chief, the day that Francis was elected the Pope, and that's what this Super Bowl pointed to, as I've been explaining, with San Francisco. Okay, in this date of 313 also hints at 3 divided by 13 equals 0.230, which equals Obama, who wore jersey number 23. All right, now on the day of 216, which hints at 216, which is 6 times 6 times 6, Alexei Navalny died, the Russian dissident, at the age of 47. We already explained the 47 years from the release of the Super Bowl 10 fictitious movie, Black Sunday, all right, to the coming solar flare, which is embedded in this Super Bowl sign with the Chiefs and the fire and all that, 50 days after the Super Bowl. Well, anyway, also, the Navalny died at the age of 47, and it was on the 47th day of the year, and he died by, well, he's known for having been poisoned, which hints at the thing, because the thing is poison. Super Bowl in gematria equals 131, this is important. This Super Bowl sign, it's been pointing to the thing, like we've been discussing. Super Bowl equals 131 in simple English gematria, and this is because G131 is the word in the Greek concordance for blood disease, which is what one gets when they take the thing, which is why Travis Kelce, after the game, shouted Viva Las Vegas, which pointed to Elvis, who promoted the thing, and Travis Kelce promoted the thing in commercials. Okay. Believe me, I know far better than you how the prediction made in this video was derived. And more importantly, I know far better than you why the righteous Christian God of the Bible has given me a voice through this prediction. If you are a quote-unquote Christian or Muslim, this prediction was not learned through a demon. Be warned that blaspheming the Holy Spirit is the unforgivable sin. If you are a New Ager or New Spirituality person, this prediction was not learned through somehow tapping into the supposed universal collective consciousness. If you are a conspiracy theorist, this prediction was not learned through figuring out a supposed code that the Illuminati and Satanists are using. This prediction was learned through the Bible and through watching carefully the Lord's prophetic signs, which Jesus commanded all Christians to do. Besides proving that Jesus Christ is the Lord, the reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction is to prove that the controversial things that I am saying in the videos on this channel are the truth. Therefore, a wise person will want to watch all of the videos on this channel. Once this prediction has come to pass, you should know that you need to watch every minute of every video on this channel and read the homepage of the website TrumpPrediction.com or HarrisCrashPrediction.com. Time is running out, and if for some reason you don't have enough time to watch all of the videos on this channel, I will leave a list of the most important videos in the description box below this video or on the homepage of the website. In terms of God's prophetic signs and knowing what God is doing, after having watched this video, you are now one of the most informed people on the planet. The question is, what will you now do with this information? And how many people will you help get this video to? Keep on posting the link to this video everywhere in social media. And if you are Christian, know that this video, which explains this prediction that is from God, is obviously indisputable proof for the God of the Bible and Jesus. And so make sure you keep sharing the link to this video. And if you would like the PDF file for the flyer I hand out on busy street corners, place on car windshields in busy parking lots, and put in mailboxes, please contact me at darrenjacksinbox@gmail.com. In my opinion, every single believer, unless they have a health condition, should be doing something like this in the streets every day. Also, everyone should have some of these flyers in their pockets, handing them out as they go about their daily business, when they walk from their car into the bank or to the grocery store. As they walk up and down the aisles of the grocery store, hand them out to people. I personally don't know what someone is thinking if they are not doing this. And if someone thinks that they are too shy to do this, what I have to say is get over it. Courage isn't a lack of fear, it is action in spite of it. And God wants us to be courageous for Him. Now is not the time to be handing out typical evangelical tracts that are largely in error anyway. For example, it isn't appropriate to be telling unbelievers about the love of God or John 3:16, a passage John wrote for believers. In my opinion, you should be handing out the flyer I hand out. This flyer will be far more effective than any other evangelical flyer or tract. Please contact me. I think it is necessary to state the obvious here. The purpose of this prediction that is being made in this video is an evangelical tool. Unlike any other evangelical tool conceivable, it is necessary that you do something with this. The flyer that I hand out will also direct people to these videos. Keep in mind Jesus' parable of the 10 bags of gold. The bags of gold represent our abilities and opportunities, and the servants represent Christians. The knowledge in this video and the knowledge of the Lord's timing is a bag of gold. The Christian that did nothing with his bag of gold was banished to hell. The Reformed, Lutheran, Calvinist, once saved, always saved theology that says that a Christian doesn't have to do anything is false and is deception from Satan. And believe me, the reason why God has given me a voice through these predictions is to prove what I have just said. Make sure you watch the 23 church signs video on this channel. Also keep in mind Ezekiel chapter 33. But if the watchman sees the sword coming and does not blow the trumpet, so that the people are not warned, the sword comes and takes any one of them, that person is taken away in his iniquity, but his blood I will require at the watchman's hand. If you choose to not do anything about the information you have learned in this video, In other words, tell and warn others about it. It would have been better for you to not have learned this in the first place. If you really believe in this ministry and have the spiritual eyes to see that it is from God, then I have a small one-time favor to ask of you. It isn't financial. Please email me and let me know that you would like to help. The reason why God has given me a voice through this prediction, the purpose of this prediction in this video that is from God, is to prove the following things that I am saying. Make no mistake, this is the purpose for why God has given this prediction, and to not appreciate this is to miss entirely the point of this prediction from God, the purpose of this video, and the purpose of this video channel. Make sure that you also watch the video on this channel titled God's Purpose for These Predictions. Aliens and UFOs are demons masquerading as aliens and UFOs. These so-called aliens will make Pope Francis their ambassador for the world. The Pope is the first of the two antichrists. Catholicism isn't the Bible and isn't Christianity. Catholicism is ancient pagan religion presented in a wrapper to make it appear like it is Christianity. We know from the Old Testament that the thing that God detests the most is false pagan worship and religion. The Jews were exiled to Babylon for mixing pagan religion into their Judaism. And this is exactly what Catholicism is. It is a mixture of pagan religion with Christianity. If you are Catholic, believe me, you need to repent of this Catholicism immediately and have nothing to do with Catholicism. It is not a legitimate denomination of Christianity. Make sure you watch the video titled The Truth About Catholicism that is on this channel and visit the website. Catholicism is the wolf in sheep's clothing. There will likely be a massive Mary ghost that the whole world will see, but it will be demonic deception. Praying to Mary is praying to demons. God absolutely hates the pagan worship and traditions within Roman Catholicism. Please understand that I am only trying to help. I am not saying that God hates Catholics, to be clear. The New Age or New Spirituality or Consciousness religion is evil deception from Satan. The supernatural experiences that Catholics experience that confirm for them that Catholicism is true are demonic deception. The same applies to all other false religions and New Age spirituality. In 2 Thessalonians, it says we get the deception we ask for. But these spiritual experiences are demonic deception for those that refuse to love the truth and so be saved. In other words, it is foolish to rely on spiritual or mystical experiences, and those that do are asking for demonic deception. Satan is very real, he is very powerful, he has enormous power, and he doesn't fool people as a being with two horns and a tail. He presents himself and his powers as an angel of light. New Age near-death experiences are deception from Satan. There are also many near-death experiences of hell. Why would you believe the New Ager ones and not the ones of hell? The supernatural highs from yoga and meditation are demonic deception. They are the counterfeit Holy Spirit. Miraculous healing as a result of New Age practices such as Reiki, crystal work, yoga, etc. are demonic and from the power of Satan. There is absolutely no New Age or collective consciousness type of explanation for how these predictions were known ahead of time. They were known ahead of time through Bible prophecy and watching for God's prophetic signs. Jesus was not just another supposed enlightened master like the supposedly enlightened Buddha. Jesus was God incarnate, and he is the only way to eternal life and to God the Father. The New Age religion and New Spirituality is in truth worship of the self. It is transgression of the first commandment, and it is the height of false idolatrous, false God worship. We are not God. We are not part of God. God is holy, which is a Hebrew word that means separate from. The big deception in the end times will be New Age spirituality, and this satanic deception will merge with Catholicism. The purpose for these predictions, the reason why God has given me a voice through these predictions, is to prove the things that I am saying. The New Age religion is deception from Satan designed to keep someone in their pride and for repenting for their sins and for admitting that they need to be forgiven and that they need a Savior, Lord Jesus Christ. New Age religion is essentially atheistic spirituality, and New Age spirituality and New Agers are essentially narcissistic, immature children that are rebelling against a disciplinary father. Contrary to what New Agers and Muslims say, the Bible has not been tainted or changed. This is a lie from Satan. There is no evidence for this. And in fact, the evidence is overwhelmingly to the contrary. If you hold the New Age belief that life is for learning lessons, and that whatever we supposedly don't learn in this life, we will supposedly learn in the supposed next reincarnation, and if you believe that there is no need for justice, that Adolf Hitler and the child rapist and murderer will get off the hook, not only do you have a sick, twisted view of the world and your values are morally repugnant, and not only are you an enemy of the true God, which is the God of the Bible, the God of Israel, but you will go to hell unless you plead for mercy for your sin and believe in your Savior, Jesus Christ. The New Age Hindu belief that all religions are authentic expressions of the truth is a lie from Satan, in order to expunge the West of its traditional Judeo-Christian values in exchange for multiculturalism and an ethos of intolerance of intolerance. This credo of inclusivism of the cult of the political left, combined with the worship of science and backed by pseudoscientific assertions regarding physics, made for fertile ground for the Hindu belief that all religions are different paths up the same mountain, and fertile ground for the Hindu religious practices such as meditation and yoga. This New Age religion that is leading to the soon-coming one-world religion in which all religions come together in the spirit of peace is the Antichrist religion. Either the world is round or it is flat. Likewise, God is either a personal being set apart from his creation. The word holy is Hebrew for set apart, or God is the creation itself, and an impersonal energy or collective consciousness, etc. This latter belief is called pantheism. God is either the creation itself, or he created the creation. He is either pantheistic or monotheistic, but he cannot be both. The monotheistic God of the Bible desires to have his holy, set-apart spirit dwell inside your body, but because this God is good, he is also righteous, and he hates sin. We are created in the image of God, and as such, we have free will. Our free will is supremely important to God. God will not impose himself on anyone. No one wishes to marry a robot, and likewise, God wishes to have a genuine relationship with his creature that he has given free will to. Only when we choose God will he then choose to dwell inside us with his holy set-apart spirit. His holy set-apart spirit is the opposite of what New Agers and Hindus think of as the so-called universal spirit. For God to be able to dwell inside our body, which is a temple for God, we must first cleanse our temple, our body. The cleansing of our temple comes through repentance for our sins and commitment to follow God and his ways, which he revealed in the Bible. God will then reciprocate with his holy set-apart spirit inside us and begin the regeneration process of our souls, which will lead to eternal life. Claiming to be part of the impersonal energy God that is the creation itself, and practicing supposed spiritual exercises like yoga and meditation in order to enable supposed spiritual development is like trying to force God into yourself without first choosing God and without God choosing you. It is like a rape or a forced arranged marriage. God hates this. It is also worship of the self and the height of the transgression of the first commandment to not worship other gods. Through many clever lies, Satan has deceived many atheistic spirituality people into these New Age practices, and this is why the energetic highs and the miraculous healings they receive is a product of the counterfeit Holy Spirit. It is the product of Satan's power. As it says in the Bible, God gives those the deception that they ask for. You will go to hell unless you repent of New Age spirituality, and the purpose of this prediction that is from God, that is in this video, is to prove this to you. There is a spiritual reality behind the material world that we see. The wages for sin is death. Sin means to miss the mark. No one is good, all have sinned. Because of sin, people are captives of the ruler of this world, Satan. People's souls belong to Satan, whose power over people is death. God took the form of a man, Jesus Christ, and paid the ransom that is owed to the ruler of this world. Through Christ's death and resurrection, he defeated sin and he overcame Satan's power in death. It is through Christ and his Spirit that it is possible for everyone to be forgiven of their sin, and we can have eternal life if we choose it. We can choose to follow Jesus out of captivity from sin and Satan, or we can choose to reject this and remain a slave to this world, sin, and to Satan. If one rejects Jesus Christ, after they die, they will pay the price for their sin in hell, and then they will die the second death, and their soul will cease to exist. Believing in Christ means much more than simple intellectual agreement. It means to repent of sin and completely commit one's life and become a willing slave to Jesus and his kingdom. Jesus said we need to be born again, which implies a death of the self and a death to this world. Believing in Jesus implies living out one's faith through taking action that typically involves risk and sacrifice. This demonstration of faith through action is what it means to have faith and to believe in Jesus. Some Christians will tell you otherwise, but they are deceived and they ignore countless passages in the Bible. Obviously, when these predictions come to pass, you will know that you should watch all of the videos on this channel, beginning with the videos that are linked to in the description box below this video. I strongly recommend not going through the videos on this channel in random fashion, selecting titles that may be interesting, but rather I strongly recommend following my recommendations that are listed in the description box below this video. This channel is not a daily or weekly update on the latest news. Rather, this channel is a library that has documented God's true big picture of signs, patterns, and connections. Hopefully you at least found this introduction video to be interesting, and if so, please leave a like and upvote the video, and please consider sharing the video. It is essential that everyone immediately read the homepage of my website, TrumpPrediction.com, or PredictionsProveIt.com, and also check out the other information that I have linked to on the website. You should also pause this video right now and make a note of my other social media outlets. You never know when you will need them, and you might not be able to find them later. Also, if you want to download these videos as podcasts, I now have a podcast channel at Podbean, which is named Predictions Prove It. Also, if you are watching this video on the YT channel, please note that not all of the videos are on this channel, and so I highly recommend going over to one of the other channels.